Welcome back to Factory Sealed. It's April 20th, 2019. My name's Eric Peterson. Joining me today, Mr. Mike Tyson.
I'd like to start this episode off with an announcement.
Ooh.
In honor of the PSN name changes finally happening, my name is now officially Sploot. And just like the PSN name change, if you go back and listen to the other shows, my name will be Sploot throughout, apart from odd episodes where it won't work, and you'll have to re-download it, and then my name will be Mike, but then it'll screw up the rest of the episodes.
Well, anything's better than Hey Mikey Cock Gobbler. I mean, that was really wearing
Exactly.
And Zach can finally change his to Piss Eyes.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that for legal reasons.
No?
Oh, please do it. Please do it.
Somehow I feel like I'll lose my best trophies by doing that, so now.
I thought about changing mine to Caramel Cran, but I've had Honest Pizza for too long.
Yeah, well, at the risk of talking about video games far too soon.
Ooh, don't do it.
Dear God.
Don't do it.
Have you guys actually, read the kind of terms and conditions of all that shit? Like, the whole thing of, there's an actual full list of, games where you'll have problems, games where you may have minor problems, and then games where you'll be fine. But they also can't guarantee the games you'll be fine will be fine.
Yeah. Basically, you should just say, this is only going to work for Fortnite, and it's going to fuck everything else up. That's
I don't get how they fucked it up that bad. It's a simple database where all you do is tag the person's name with this field. Everybody else seems to have figured it out.
Well, it's the fuck up from when they first started PSN, isn't it? So Xbox, Microsoft were clever. Basically, when you create your login, you have an arbitrary set of numbers and digits in the background that belong to you, and then you put the name on top. Whereas PlayStation, no, whatever you put as your first thing, that is your ID on their system. And idiots. Yeah. Now it's fucked everything up.
I had a buddy that set up and it was a fairly clever username. I don't remember what it was, but he put an underscore in it. An underscore is one of the hardest characters to get to in the keyboard, so now all of his friends damn him every time we'd have to look him up. Son of a bitch! I have to click 8 buttons to get to the fucking underscore. No, I'm not friending you. Screw that.
Oh yeah, my email address has 2 underscores.
Looks like we are done being friends.
20 years of friendship bastard. Down the toilet.
Damn you, underscore.
Down the underscore.
But yes, in case you have not picked up on it, that is neither Tom nor Dan. That is Zack Fawley himself.
Woo!
Cheers, everyone. How are you?
We felt we needed...
He's our guest. More fanfare.
Hooray. I'm a patron, so technically I pay for this.
Money well spent, sir.
Subtle plug.
Yeah. My wife loves cracking jokes on me about this. She's like, don't you patronize them? I'm like, yes. She's like, so you pay to work? I'm like, yeah, I do.
Don't judge me.
I patronize and I patronize.
That's right.
And I kick piss in their eyes.
Stick around long enough and I'll placate you as well.
How are we, gentlemen?
Good.
I am very well, thanks for asking.
I'm getting old, and you know how I can tell?
You're losing all your hair.
That.
Things hurt when you wake up. You have to pee all the time.
Yes.
You're getting Social Security checks.
No,
your pubes are turning grey.
No, not yet.
The
keep
gray
going.
bush.
We'll see
That's
if you
rough.
guess this.
Don't go full gray bush.
If you're not shaving that off, you're doing it wrong. I can't drink alcohol at all anymore. I took one sip of beer yesterday at 6 o'clock and woke up with a raging hangover.
Oh, that sucks for you.
I know. I got to step up my day drinking.
The answer is to drink more.
I think that's right. I think that's right, yeah.
If you're always just topping up, you're fine.
It's just teetering right on the edge of too much.
My jobless period here has taught me that if you start drinking by 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and you drink all the way to midnight, you can do it the next day, too.
You can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get some day drinking done tomorrow. We're actually got really lovely weather here in the UK at the moment. It's like 22 Celsius. I don't know what that is in gobbledygook, but
Let's
sun's
look.
shining. So I'm going to have a lovely.
Mike, that's only
barbecue
71
tomorrow.
degrees. That's damn near jacket weather.
It's lovely for here. Trust me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when you live in Phoenix and you wake up and it's 100.
It's turning into hot as balls weather here.
When you wake up in a pool of your own sweat.
Well, my office, like I told you guys, it's the weirdest room in the entire house. It's constantly 15 degrees hotter than everywhere else. And it makes no sense because all of the ventilation system is directly above this room. Just hot as shit. And I don't want to have fans on when we're doing the podcast, so by the time I get done, I'm just sitting in a puddle of my own ball sweat.
You know, like in PCs where there's like the coolant tubes, maybe you could just like fashion something that goes all along your back that you can't see.
Actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the kiddie pool in, and I'm going to sit in it in my office. And just splash around.
Yeah, that'll go well with wired electronics.
with some armbands on, some water wings.
Yeah, but I'll do like the guys in that one picture did. I'll put the power strip on a flip flop sandal, so it's floating. It'll stay out of the water. It'll be fine.
Eric, I think I speak for all fans when I say Speedo or get the fuck out.
Done.
I mean, it's gonna have to be.
Done.
You're gonna have to banana hammock it up.
You have to understand it's going to be an American flag Speedo. There's going to be no other substitutions.
You not have like a Union Jack on one of the shows at least.
Yeah, it'll be on the asshole.
I'll take it.
Like you'll have to just do
The,
like
the,
a
the
little...
Union Jack thing, not your asshole.
Oh, I mean, you can have either.
Definitely not in your asshole. You can't broadcast that on Twitch. They've tried.
What if I blur it out? What if I have Dan record it?
It's possible, but he'll just Photoshop like Jeremy Sanford's head in it.
Oh God.
So
Oh, God.
that's not okay either.
That man's head gets everywhere.
My head or Jeremy's?
Both.
Yeah, really.
It's a wonderful thing to have a head as recognizable and lovely. It just fits in so many situations.
See, because I have like big hair, it's very difficult to crop my head out, so it doesn't happen to me very often.
Mike, what would it take within the community for you to shave your head?
I don't know.
The answer can't be nothing.
No. I look like a dick with short hair.
That's why I want to see it.
I don't mean like I don't mean I've got a phallic head.
That'd be really weird if you shaved your head and then you just had like balls on your chin. That would be strange.
Is there an episode of South Park
Yes.
where they glue like balls onto Butter's chin?
Yeah.
So, on the Stick of Truth, you could actually get that as part of your character.
Was it like a defense upgrade?
I
Epic
can't
head
remember.
armor.
It might just be cosmetic.
So has anybody played anything good this week?
My God. No, I've had no time for gaming. None.
Oh.
Outside of what we had to play.
I played through and finished Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Oh, what'd you think?
Hoo-wee! Fucking loved it. What a game.
That game. Did you play it with headphones on?
Briefly for some of it, but then like Hazel wanted to watch some of it as well. But I've got a decent soundbar and bass sub, and you know, still a great experience without the headphones. So, but yeah, what a like. Don't get me wrong, it's repetitive and the combat's a little bit simple and in places, but in terms of just like kind of an emotional fucking roller coaster of an experience, wow, yeah,
Yeah.
so
That game
looks
is
beautiful on
phenomenal.
1X as well.
Yeah. Did you see they put out a Switch port this week?
Of Senua?
Yeah.
Maybe that was last week. Yeah, and it actually looks really good.
Yeah, it does. They've done a real good job of that.
Everybody was sitting back going like, "Is this really running on Switch?" It's pretty phenomenal. But that's been a week for Switch because they got Cuphead too, and that is pixel perfect to the Xbox One X version.
Yeah, so they I hear the only downside is the loading time's a little bit longer, but apparently this like negligibly longer. So
No, but as a collector, I'm going to say it for the record. Also, it's a physical release on Switch,
I
which
didn't realize
means
that.
that I will be picking it up.
Is it going to be like a common physical release or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's a 3.5 gig game, so it's tiny, so it fits on their cheaper
That's good.
memory stick.
So it's
And
what,
that's
30
why they
bucks?
decided to go physical. Yeah,
Oh yeah, I'll get that. Dragon's
Yeah.
Dogma is coming out on Switch next week too. I'm picking that one up for sure.
nice.
That was a action RPG game that really got overlooked in its day.
Yeah, I think those games kind of got piled all in together with Baldur's Gate, which was really weird.
Yeah.
Because they're really different styles of game. But man, that Dragon's Dogma in particular was excellent.
It came out, I think it came out around the time of one of the Souls games, and it got
Yeah.
swept under the rug, but it was a really neat blend of the difficulty of the Souls game and the open world aspect of the Elder Scrolls games. But what killed it for me was the lack of convenient fast travel. It took like 8 or 9 hours to get into the game before you unlocked fast travel, and even then it was like okay, sort of fast travel at best, if you could get
The
to it.
Red Dead 2 syndrome.
Yeah,
Oh god.
yeah, it was rough, but in all, I mean, the game itself was fantastic. I probably only put about 15 hours into it, and I want to get through the rest of it. But having it on the Switch to be able to just pick up and play is going to be fantastic, and it's only $30.
Eric Peterson in not finishing long game shocker. I'll say it because Dan's not here.
Channel your Dan
Yeah.
Curtis.
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is that Switch's greatest asset is its ability to let you play portably. And now that they're really getting good at converting games, even if they're at a slightly lesser quality or a lower quality, I think that you can overlook a lot of that for, hey, I can take this with me on a plane or on a train or anywhere I go.
I'm tempted to buy Cuphead again because I did buy it for Xbox. It's only, I looked on the eShop, it's only £16.99.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, I expect it to have, like, as Tom says, the Nintendo premium, but...
Yeah.
That's only on their
I
first
think-
party stuff.
True, but sometimes some of the ports are expensive. Saying that's Hellblade, going back to Hellblade, I think that's only $24.99 on the eShop over here, so...
This game came out 16 years ago, still $60.
Exactly. I've been trying to buy a copy of Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze for the Wii forever, and I just refuse to pay full price, and I cannot find it for under that. So, yeah, screw that.
For the
Nintendo
Wii
Premier-
U?
Yeah,
Zach, add that to your list. Add that to your list. I'll look for it.
I will. I got to work on my list, actually.
Have you looked
That's
at it? So, little context here. Ben and I have been constantly sending messages back and forth about what games we're looking for. I'm like, you know what?
Back and forth.
Let's just make a list. Or let's make a Google Doc. So we made a document that we shared and then added Tom and Zach to it. And it's a disgusting list of expensive shit. I mean, one of the games that Ben has on there, so we have a category: game, console, what condition, like do you want to complete in box, loose, anything, and then what you're willing to pay. And then if you want to be contacted before purchasing that. And one of the games Ben has on there is just a casual $700.
Yeah. Is it one? I haven't looked through his list yet. Is it like a super obscure coloring book NES game?
No.
It
wasn't. Jesus, how much did he spend on that at MoCon? Like $200?
Yeah, I think so.
Dinosaur coloring book or something?
Yeah, I mean, and I get it; it's super rare, but geez.
No, it was Space Adventure for Sega CD.
Oh, okay.
And he told me yesterday he did end up buying it for $600, so he saved $100.
Ooh, what a bargain!
Ugh. Good God.
Yeah, that'll hurt when his Sega CD disc rots.
Hey, at least I'll have a $600 box.
Hey, but you know what? Polymega is here to save us all. It's supposed to come out sometime at the beginning of summer, and it is a retro system that right now it's supposed to be modular, meaning that you can buy like add-ins to play old Nintendo carts and old Sega Genesis carts. But the offset offering is $300. It plays all CD-based games, so Neo Geo CD, Sega CD, Saturn, TurboGrafx CD. But its big deal is once you have the disc and you put it in, you can back it up to its hard drive.
Oh, man. How big is the hard drive?
I don't know, and I think it actually takes SD cards, but I'd have to look that up. But you look at that and you say, like, well, if we have all this issue with, losing games and potentially having disk rot on games, that's a great way to archive some of your stuff.
Oh, man. Did you pre-order one of these?
I did not, because it was a Kickstarter window thing.
Yeah.
But I've got one of my local shops has an order in for 3 of them, and he's promised me one of them. So
if he's got a second one available, I will take it.
Yeah, sure.
That controller
Absolutely.
is hideous, by the way, Zach.
Yeah, it's not good.
Why did they choose Roman numerals for the buttons?
At a guess, because the First System's big draw is playing TurboGrafx games, and they have Roman numerals.
Got it.
It's button 1 and 2.
It looks like they have a bunch of different controllers, too.
Yeah, and then they'll start selling the modules so you can plug in cartridges. It's just an adaptive console, so you put different modules in it.
Wait, so it's $300 to just get the base, and then you have to buy the additional modules?
Yeah, but the modules are supposed to be like $25 to $50 a pop.
Console DLC.
But again, the main draw to that is, it's got all the bells and whistles for, HDMI output and upscaling and all that, but you can back up your games to it. It's your game. It's not the Retron where you're playing an emulated version of the game. It's actually your game that you're backing up.
So how are they getting around licensing and everything on this?
That was literally going to be my next question.
At a guess, because if you own a game, you have the right to back it up. And if you own the game and the piece of hardware, I think that's it'd be one of those suits like, remember Sony and Sega took Bleem to task years ago for being able to use your own games in different consoles, and they lost. So I think it kind of sits in that ballpark.
Interesting.
There's something similar with music these days, isn't there, where if you own the physical media and you make a backup of it, it's not illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That makes
copyright
sense.
laws. Copyright law is the most aggravating thing to me as a collector, because you just lose games, and now with the advent of digital, it's possible that when you buy a digital game that you'll play it with different music, or something will be cut out of it, years from now, and that just really irritates me.
Eric, I told you about that quote-unquote new Burnout game recently.
Yeah, Dangerous Driving.
There's a game come out, Dangerous Driving, so it's by some guys who originally made Burnout, and one of the ways they've got around one, making it cheaply, but also having an awesome soundtrack on it, is that they have like a deal with Spotify where you can play Spotify whilst playing the game, and they actually have like playlists up there of like songs they would want in the game, stuff like that, which I thought was an interesting way of getting around kind of licensing. Like, it'd be really interesting if they bring out they remaster Crazy Taxi or something like that, and instead of having to pay for the licensing of the old songs, or Tony Hawk's or something like that, you just allow them to play Spotify through it, and Spotify would make money, because you have to have premium for it to work on Dangerous Driving, so you have to have Spotify premium, you can't have the free, but then you can play it through it, and I thought that's a really novel idea.
Dangerous Driving is out?
Yeah, came out like last week.
What the fuck? I'm gonna go buy this today.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
How did I not?
I think it came out.
That's
I think it came out a
ingenious.
couple of days after I told you about it.
You remember the old original Xbox had that feature where you could rip discs to its hard drive and then use that music in your games. And I mean, I always thought that was a feature that was going to get them in trouble, and it did. But I mean, that is the greatest way that I can think of to kind of circumvent all the copyright stuff. Yeah. I mean, in case in point, look at a game like Alan Wake. Alan Wake featured tons of classic rock, which they had limited licensing rights to. And then it basically disappeared off every market for almost 2 years while they sorted it out. And that was 5 years after it came out.
Well, and then
so I think
the 360,
you got to figure that out.
The 360 had that feature too, where you could insert custom soundtracks, and that was one of the big selling points over that versus PS3. PS3 took forever to implement that. Even when they did, it was on very few games.
Yeah. And it was bitch. I don't think you could rip it off CDs. I think you had to put it onto a memory stick and then put it onto the PS3, because I specifically remember one of the WWE games, you could use licensed songs that were on your system as entrance music, and that's what I had. But if you played online, basically no music would play whatsoever. But I remember I had to load the MP3 onto a USB stick, then put the USB stick into the PS3 to then load it onto the PS3, rather than just ripping it straight off the disc.
So basically, they wanted to create a complex process, so complex you didn't even want to do it.
Exactly. And then, when you played online and your character came out, the other player couldn't hear it anyway because the licensed stuff wouldn't come across.
Oh, Jesus.
Excellent.
That's the fucking point.
And now with the added benefit of
preservation.
using the Sony UI, then it'll take 45 minutes to just click through different menus anyway.
Exactly. But yeah, I do think that like some of these old games where you got licensing issues, if they wanted to bring, because there are some games that don't come onto PSN or onto the Xbox store or anything like that because of music licensing. Like, I think what Dangerous Driving has done here, I think, is a great way to possibly get these games back and still be able to have quote-unquote licensed soundtracks. I think it's a very interesting thing to do.
Well, I mean, and there are some games that are going to be in licensing hell forever. In fact, there was a really good article, and I don't remember if it was Polygon or Kotaku. It was a week or so ago, and they were talking about the old Batman games and how those will never be digitally reproduced. And they won't be because they are literally in licensing hell. They were owned by a different company. Now it's owned by Warner Brothers. The game was made by like LJN. So now there's literally no way to go to all the properties that existed that license those games to relicense and get rights to it. So those games are just kind of lost.
See, I was thinking, I don't remember if Tom and I talked about this or I feel like we did on some show, but do you think eventually we'll just get to the point where when they do licensing songs for these games, they'll just say, look, this is a perpetual license. As long as this song is in our game, we're just going to get to forever use it. Otherwise, we're just going to continually start to lose this media over time.
I think if they're smart, they'll start figuring that out, but they're going to have to pay bigger to do it because the deal is a lot of times music that's licensed is either licensed from a small independent guy that's just making music for a game, or, if they are licensing like bigger top 40 stuff, those are never going to be more than anything other than limited licenses because of the way that the recording industry works. So it's a problem, but I'm glad to see games like the Burnout, trying to solve it. And I think that's a fantastic idea.
But in terms of preservation, anyway, it's going to become much, much harder as we go towards an all-digital future anyway. I mean, just last week or this week, I think it was, the guys who made Drive Club, they're announcing that, they're stopping web support of that. The servers are going to go offline and you're not going to be able to play certain modes of it and things like that. And when that happens as well, it's going to be delisted from all of the stores. I think if you purchased it, you'll be able to buy it from your old download list. But unless you've got a hard copy of Drive Club, that you're essentially not going to be able to play that very soon, even though you bought it.
That's a problem that's plagued PC gaming for a long time. I look at games like Tribes.
Yeah.
And Tribes 2, which you literally cannot play because they only work on dedicated servers servers that run through the old EA Sierra setup, and they do not work anymore. So those games are just lost. You can load it up. You could probably load up a single-player map, but you can't do anything other than that. And that's a shame because Tribes, for example, is one of the great reasons to play a PC multiplayer game from 1990.
I remember when Tribes made its way to PS2 when PS2 first got its network adapter. That was fantastic. Like, I was playing this on PC, now I can play it on a console. This is the future.
Yeah, the one that really gets me, oddly, is the original PlanetSide.
Yeah.
PlanetSide was so fun, and it did things that were so different to other games in that, they really just dropped you on an enormous playing field and gave you a bunch of weapons and toys and told you to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And, like, some of those things are just not used anymore. Like, my primary role in that game was I piloted a troop carrier. So all I did was really figure out how to get a troop carrier and how to fly people back and forth to the various battles. And that's just not something that you see in many games because it was sort of role-based.
Well, Mag tried to do that on PS3 as well, but then they fumbled that where they truncated it and like, well, yes, this is technically 150 people on this map, but like you're relegated to this section and doing this job, and
Eric has fucking Big Ben in his office.
What the hell was that? Did someone step on a piano or something?
Did it hit? Was it that?
Dong.
Was it this?
Yeah. Just to watch Mike's face digress into that was just like, what the fuck was that?
He's like, I know that clock.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I think, and one of the things that we'll talk about today, related to the sort of game of the week, is related to how digital games change.
You don't know how proud I am that stuck.
I know. Mike, I was just... I had to do it because Dan wasn't here.
I know, because the second time I did it, Dan just went, "Oh, still doing that, are we?" and now even he's doing it.
But the Castlevania Symphony of the Night that was just released in the Requiem collection, which I think is what most people will end up playing because the original is friggin' expensive.
Oh. I came across a copy of it yesterday it was like $70 just loose. And it was the greatest hits copy, $70 loose.
Well, you were with me in that shop when I saw the Black Label, and I got it for $50, and you're like, "Why are you so excited about that?" I'm like, "You don't understand. Like, you don't see this game, number one, and number two, here in Georgia, if I found that game, it would be an easy $120 to $150."
And you got that in Georgia, right? Or in
Missouri? In Missouri, yeah.
Oh.
He just had it sitting in a case. I was like, "Yep, I'll take that."
I've already started
4 copies of it. I'll take another one.
I've already started allocating funds.
Excuse me, sir. May I rape you dry?
Yes. It's that man and that lady at the garage sale, man. I have raped people over games.
That poor lady.
I'm not even sorry.
That poor lady.
Back to the game preservation thing, though. I mean, we've mentioned many times on the show about games as a service and how those games are not going to be playable in the future. And I've not been on, and linking that to this, I've not been on the show since Stadia was announced, and which might I say sounds like an STD.
Yep. I got Stadia.
Got a bad taste of that Google Stadia.
And
I had Swamp Ass, and then it turned into Stadia.
Got piss kicked in my eyes and got a bad case of Stadia.
The interesting thing with that, I mean, obviously third party by the by, but they said they're going to have exclusive games. They've got exclusive studios and things like that. A lot of people have a bit of a fear about whether Google are going to end up supporting Stadia for the long term. Those games that are going to be exclusive to Stadia, I mean, they might be shit, we don't know yet, but if there ends up being some absolute classics on there, what is going to happen to those?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they won't have any massive exclusives like that. I don't know if they're that big to have a company throw their weight behind. Be like, we're going to release this game just on Stadia.
But to Mike's point, they could get a sleeper indie hit. I mean, look at something like Undertale. Those guys had no money when they made Undertale, and if Google approaches you and say, "Hey, we'll publish your game for free," that's how it happens, I think.
Sidebar, by the way, another game I played, because obviously I've not been on for a few shows. I played Deltarune Chapter 1 recently. Oh boy, that is a lot of fun. Bold statement, I think I might enjoy it more than Undertale.
Interesting.
But yeah, check it out. If you've got a Switch, download it. It's free.
How long is it?
If you liked Undertale.
It's just a demo of it, right?
Yeah, well, it's Chapter 1. I don't know, 4 hours? 3-4 hours? It's long, it's lengthy.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, yeah, back to Stadia. Yeah, if they have an indie hit like Zach said, or, we don't know what the future holds. Stadia might end up being a massive, massive success, and if they end up being a massive success, they might end up making some amazing AAA games that would be trapped on there.
Yeah. Well, I think Stadia's got 2 big hurdles to overcome. One, they haven't talked about their pricing yet, which, don't get me wrong, I like Google products. I have lots of them in my home, but they range from, "Oh, wow, this is really affordable," to, "Oh my God, my butthole." And case in point, YouTube TV was really pretty affordable up till last week. And YouTube TV is just their sort of television service, which gets you all local channels and all that stuff. But it was like $30 a month. Well, compared to cable service, it was fantastic for me. Well, they added 4 new channels. One of those happened to be HGTV, and guess what? Now it's $50 a month. So yeah, pass. Yeah, I don't really need TV that much. So
I don't think I've paid for cable in 12 years.
No, we've been cord cutters since we moved into the last house, which that means this has been officially 6.5, 7 years. But I think the other big hurdle that they have to overcome is I'm going to call it hyperbole, or hubris if you prefer, of we can stream 4K 60, because it smells like bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening.
It smells
for the mass
idealistic,
populace.
and to a lot of people, are like, "Oh, that's going to be fantastic," but that's a very small percentage of people who I think are going to be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
See, me and you were chatting about this over WhatsApp, Eric. Because when the whole Stadia announcement happened, I think you were realistically cautious about it, and I did get a bit excited about it. I don't think I'm going to use it, to be honest. It depends on pricing and things like that. But if they are going to support it, and I know one of your arguments was, will they support it? I think this whole 4K 60 thing isn't necessarily going to work straight away. They claim it's going to happen when it does. That necessarily won't. But you always bang on about early adopters, and I think the early adopters that are going to be able to use this service, if they stand by it, I think once the infrastructure is there for more people to have it, then and they still support it, I think it could still be a success.
See, I was thinking about that too. Early adopters are really important within technology, especially with brand new technology. But I think in the gaming world, early adopters are more apt to jump on board with proven technology. New consoles always have their early adopters because most people are like, well, I'm going to wait for this to have the bugs worked out of it, or for some good games to come out, or for a price drop, or any other variety of reasons. But a lot of this other tech that's unproven, I think you're going to be a little harder pressed to find a large majority of people who are going to jump into it. You're still going to have the diehards who are going to say, oh, it's only $100, yeah, whatever, I'll give it a shot. But, unless Google's really able to meet all of their expectations, I think a lot of people are going to look at it a little sideways and be like, well, I think I'm just going to stick with this new PS5 that's coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, one of my arguments to you, which again, it's a bit of a flimsy argument, and you pointed out to me there was a bit of a flimsy argument, but when Netflix first came out, there was a lot of people who didn't have the bandwidth for that, and they made a success out of it. Yeah,
but they also built their business off of DVD rental for years.
True, I'll give you that.
And the streaming was secondary, and then as DVDs phased out, so they had a really cool market where DVD service was phasing out just as bandwidth was increasing enough, so they could seamlessly transition.
Don't forget, too, when Netflix first debuted, I can remember my dad was the first one. He had a Blu-ray player, so he had Netflix service, and then the Blu-ray player had the actual Netflix app on it, which is the first time I'd ever seen it. This was, 10 years ago.
It was garbage.
And it had 7 movies on it. They did a huge beta period where they put literally nothing on that service other than, hey, here's one top-end movie and like 4 older things. But they betaed it like that forever. It was probably 2 years later that the first, I'd call it, real iteration of Netflix came out with categories and, the ability to sort stuff, and had a decent amount of content in it. But it was also super cheap. And if Google can pull that off, let's say they come out and they announce Stadia service for $5 a month or $10 a month, I think the adoption rate goes through the roof.
Have you been watching how steadily Netflix has been increasing? I just got an email like, hey, that plan you used to be paying $8.99 a month for? It's now $16.99.
Yeah,
mine's creeping up.
Mine has doubled, but I'll say it like this. I don't really mind it because I do pay for the multi-user account because that's the only way you get access to 4K stuff.
Yeah, same here.
And mine's gone from... I think that original plan was $9.99 a month, and now it's $14 a month. So it's not enough to give me the red ass. So I don't really care.
Like you said, it's still cheaper than cable for you, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Something I wanted to touch on with Stadia, though, because as I say, I've not been on the show since it came out. One of the things that I've not necessarily seen people talking about, and I don't know, I could be big mental here. I think one of the interesting things that came out of it that I don't think a lot of people are talking about is that whole using multiple processors for the games and things like that. So essentially, you've got almost unlimited processing power for your games if you are a developer, because of that whole thing about the units at their centers, wasn't there? And obviously, you're going to end up getting an Xbox, PlayStation, whatever. That is going to be stuck as it is, whatever processing power it has. And I think that they might have a bit of an edge there. Now, tinfoil hat for a second.
Ooh, I like these.
Pop them on, gentlemen. Yeah. This would be something I was thinking about, and I did mention this to you as well, Eric, and I think we quickly glossed over it and moved on. It would be interesting to see if Sony and Xbox do try to compete with this. Now, the whole Crackdown, it ended up being shit, obviously, but the whole Crackdown thing, they were on about using a little bit of cloud processing to enable all the destruction and everything on the map.
What destruction?
Yeah, exactly. It didn't work, obviously. That fucking game was a mess in the end, wasn't it? But here's the interesting thing. Now, when the Xbox One was first announced, they were talking about always online. Everyone shoo-shooed it. It was a fucking balls up of an announcement eventually, wasn't it, in the end? And people seem more open now to their console always being online. I mean, look at how prevalent games as a service are. You can't play them without being online. Now, this is the interesting thing. Do you see them in the future maybe going, well, if you want to play this game with the best graphics, you have to be online, and then you can use some cloud-based processing as well?
To kind of give you that
maybe
extra...
try and compete with that.
Yeah, instead of doing a PS4 and a PS4 Pro, just all right, now be online, and you can use some cloud processing to up your graphics.
Because are they going to compete with it? Do you think? Like, because that's a part of Stadia that I'm not sure people seem to have focused on quite a bit, and I think it's if they can deliver it like they said. Well, it's a lot of it with Stadia if they can deliver it, but if they can deliver that essentially unlimited processing power,
I think I mentioned this before, but my take on it is that Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft are cautiously aware. I don't think they're going to be throwing a ton of money trying to directly compete because it's an unproven territory. You know, they're not going to throw a bunch of resources.
Xbox are going to compete. They're testing xCloud.
Yeah, but they're not going to go exclusively. This is what we're doing.
Oh yeah,
they're going to make sure that okay, is this the direction that the industry is going? And then if they say, let's say Stadia is a massive success. I think they're going to have the infrastructure in place to then release, but they're not going to immediately try to compete because look what happened with motion controls, for example. Wii came out, and it was a massive success, and everybody tried to copy it, and then motion controls died off.
Yeah.
And here Sony is stuck with...
PlayStation rose them from the grave!
Well, and then here Sony stuck with this garbage 6-axis, and... the Kinect.
What about Move controllers for VR?
Yeah, well, and fortunately they were able to revive part of their. They were able to recoup part of their R&D into the Move controllers by releasing it with PlayStation VR and recoup a lot of that money. But as a whole, it's an example of one company came out, everybody was really excited about it, and everybody else tried to follow suit, and then they realized, okay, maybe this really isn't truly the future. So I think they're going to be a little bit more cautiously optimistic about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, too, that everybody is watching Microsoft right now because Microsoft is getting ready to release the Scarlett, which is their diskless, streaming-only, Xbox Game Pass box, which I don't... I'll say it like this. I think that is more about inventory control for a bunch of Xbox One S's that are just sitting there doing nothing.
The Scarlet isn't this. The Scarlet is the rumor of the Scarlet. Isn't that supposed to be like the next Xbox? There's going to be 2 editions, which has the streaming one and the normal one. This Xbox,
it's just
this Xbox One Sad Edition. Is,
I was going to say you should. Xbox One S all digital. Oh, it's the sad version.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and I think everybody's kind of watching them to see how that goes. Now, Microsoft
not at that fucking price point.
No,
Christ.
Well, and I've said this for a long time. The Xbox One was just bad. The Xbox One S was better, and the Xbox One X is a really good piece of kit.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, ever since I got my One X, I look at a lot of those Digital Foundry videos that you watch, Zach, where you look at graphics comparisons and things like that. And, obviously they always do the standard boxes, the One X, the One and the PS4, then they do the One X and the PS4 Pro. Yeah. And the standard Xboxes, Xbox Ones and Xbox One S, they lag behind even the actual just standard PlayStation every single time.
Oh, the One S is just muddy garbage.
Yeah, Red Dead on that was... Oof.
Well, I mean, but there's a really simple explanation why. The One, they'll never benchmark the Xbox One again. Number one, because it's not sold anymore. But the One S was higher clock. But there's a very specific reason for that. The PlayStation 4 was just a better piece of kit. Mm-hmm. The original Xbox and the One S, by function of what it is, had a huge push towards... Remember, they were doing all that Kinect and TV on your Xbox and all that shit? Well, they actually removed 20 rendering cores from the GPU. It is a handicapped GPU, so they could plug in ES RAM, which is garbage. And then because they didn't want to have production issues like they had and sourcing issues in the past, instead of the DDR5, the faster memory they used on the PlayStation, they used this old garbage DDR3. So there is a very specific reason why the Xbox One was always going to be slower. And Eric, you've said it before. I mean, the Xbox One is not that far removed from an Xbox 360. No. It just has a better GPU. But the CPU is pretty shit. So I think, releasing this diskless version is not a bad idea because you get a lot of people in the sort of iconoclast that, and I don't mean that as any sort of disparaging remark, but, if you're a parent and you want to buy a system for your little kid who's just getting into gaming, it's not a bad entry point. It doesn't have discs. You don't have to worry about them getting scratched up. But that price point is balls.
Yeah, I mean, what is it, $250?
$260, yeah.
Yeah, but you get... Now, don't get me wrong, you get 3 games with that. It comes bundled with Minecraft, Sea of Thieves, and... I can't remember what the third one was.
which are free on Game Pass anyway.
Forza.
But yeah,
So-
this is my point. All 3 of them are on Game Pass.
Yeah, and I'm confused by the weird strategy now where they're combining a subscription for Game Pass and Gold. Like that's now a thing where instead of paying $10 a month, you can pay $14 a month and get access to Gold and Game Pass. And I'm like, well, okay, but that's not really saving anybody any money. So you're just bundling it so we don't get 2 charges.
It isn't. If you pay for a full year's worth of Xbox Live Gold, it works out the exact same cost, just you pay for it monthly. But if you're someone who can't afford an outright payment and are only paying for their Xbox Live per month, it's actually a saving.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fair.
But I mean, why would you pay for it monthly anyway?
Yeah, I don't. I'm not. And again, this is not me judging anybody. If you can't afford $60 for a year of something, which is basically the cost of the game, you probably don't need to be focused on buying something for your Xbox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're at the point, and I have to draw a line in the sand with people all the time because I get lots of comments from people like, "Oh, you spend a lot of money on games." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm at the point in my life where I can afford it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been doing this in college. I can't afford all this shit in college. I can barely afford it now." And that's mostly because I'm competing with Eric on fucking art books. But
Yeah.
but I think that's just every time I drive past a bus stop and I see somebody with $1,000 phone, I'm like, that's just not the right choice for you right now. That's not that's there got to be other things to focus on.
Back on the Xbox side, though, the interesting tidbit from the press release of it is it's they're claiming they're going to try and keep the $50 price difference from the MSRP of the standard Xbox One S. So if they go up and down in price, that will go up or down in price. Well, down in price. I don't think they'll put it up. But the interesting thing is, in America right now, you can get bundles for like $200 anyway. So there's already Xbox One systems out there that are cheaper than this new one that's going to be $250. So
without Xbox One S's best feature, a UHD Blu-ray drive. I mean, I hate to say it, but that really is. It's a great Blu-ray drive. Or
it's
a
just
UHD
a very
Blu-ray
interesting
drive.
thing. I mean, we discussed it when the rumors were about, and I think this price point is just madness.
Yeah. But on the other end of the spectrum, now that we have some PlayStation 5 hardware news, I got to tell you, that's pretty exciting.
That came out of absolutely nowhere. Mark Cerny's like, oh, hey, by the way, here's some info.
Yeah. And good info at that.
Oh, yeah.
It's using Ryzen and a newer version of their GPU core.
It's really interesting to see the switch from Intel to AMD.
Well, but the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox are both powered by AMD. They use Jaguar cores. So that's why I think that's why they're now focused so much on, like, hey, it's going to be backwards compatible. Of course it is. It's the same, family of hardware. So I think they'll do really good things with that. And I know people are kind of ripping on the CPU going like, oh, it's Ryzen, but Ryzen's kind of slow now. Yeah, but you have to understand, with the incredible stuff that we get out of just a standard PlayStation 4 today, the CPU power in that Ryzen core is like 19 or 20 times the power.
Yeah,
of
the
what's
next
in a
gen
PlayStation
stuff is...
4.
I think we may potentially see another massive graphical leap in this next generation, similar to what we did from PS2 to PS3. I don't think we'll ever see the same jump from PS1 to PS2 again, but from 2 to 3 we might see again.
You say that, Eric, but interestingly, because everyone says, oh yeah, there wasn't that much of a graphical leap between PS3 and PS4. You go back and play a PS3 game, like honestly, they don't look as good as you remember.
Well, I'm talking like late stage console to beginning stage console. Like late stage PS3 to early stage PS4. They're not super different. You play a mid-generation PS3 versus a late-generation PS4, yeah, they're going to be massively different because developers have figured out the console.
Yeah, what did I play recently? And I know it was a fairly early-ish release. It wasn't a PS3 exclusive that just... it looked dreadful, and there was textures popping out and popping in everywhere. Spec Ops: The Line.
Oh,
Played
yeah.
that recently.
Oh,
on PS3.
yeah.
Great, fantastic game, but man, did that thing, like, on PS3, it looks blurry, it's muddy, and, like, the colors are all really dull, and literally, like, you'll go to a new area, and, like, parts of your character will, like, pop in and out and things like that, and,
Nostalgia is a wonderful lens through which to view old games.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what game always looks good, no matter what, for some reason? Tekken 3.
Yeah.
Tekken 3 just always looks really fucking good. I don't know how.
Unless you play it on the original PlayStation Classic, then it looks like balls.
Well, yeah, there's that. Don't play anything on that thing.
No, I will tell you, I've officially modded mine and tricked it out with a bunch of new games and a decent emulator, and it's just fine.
Aren't they super cheap now? I
in-
think Tom was saying that they were like $30.
Yeah, I got mine for $29. And for that, it's fine. I've seen lots of people that have just used it for the shell to put their RetroPie in. But I have no problem with it. The mod is super easy because basically you just buy a USB memory stick and plug it in and load it up with games. I think mine has 1,000 games on it now.
Don't you literally just put a USB keyboard in and press one key and you can access...
No, you don't even have to do that. You just put the mod is now you put a USB stick in the controller 2 port, and it just works. It boots up with the new emulator.
Do you have to put the mod on the USB and then it flashes it to the BIOS of the?
No, it doesn't flash anything. It just runs off the USB.
Oh, Jesus.
So, I mean, you can still play the original game. In fact, that's one of the features of the. I don't remember. I think it's. I don't remember the name of the emulator I'm using. But the draw is you can actually go in and play the games off the actual unit, which are the PAL games, and play like their US counterparts or whatever version that you load, which is an interesting comparison. Because let me tell you, Tekken at 50 hertz is no fun. No. You UK guys had it rough there for a while with the 50 hertz standard. Yeah. I'm like, why the fuck is it jumping around? No, this doesn't work. Shit.
So let's.
It's what we have. It's what we lived with.
No.
Let's,
Speaking of emulation, though, Zach, you and Eric are more the tech guys than me, obviously, and this whole backwards compatibility with PS4 and everything that was potentially on the PS5. Now, I only know it by name. Won't begin to understand it. You don't have to explain the full thing of like the PS3 with me, to me. But like obviously the whole cell processing thing of the PS3.
Yes.
Do you ever see a PlayStation console that's kind of in the... Because they're essentially like PCs now, aren't they? Let's face it.
Yeah.
Do you ever see them being able to emulate PS3? Because even like PS Now, if you can download the games now on PS Now, but the PS3 ones you still have to stream.
Yeah, I don't know that you're going to get that. I've seen PlayStation emulators that work on really super high-end PCs, like the PlayStation 3 versions, and even those are still garbage at this point, so I'm going to say no. Cell was just... It wasn't fundamentally more powerful, but it was very different in terms of how you had to load stuff.
Well, and that's why it took Sony so long to get some quality games out for the PS3, because developers are like, well, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. That's why we had Lair. Remember Lair?
Oh, Jesus.
What a bag of shit that was.
I remember being so intrigued. I'm like, dragons? I love dragons. I'm going to fly around in a dragon. Oh, this is crap.
Now hold up your controller. Use it like a dildo. What? Do I control stuff with this?
That's going to be a real shame, though, because,
I say that, but then you have like Heavenly Sword, too.
I was going to say Heavenly Sword kind of redeemed it a little bit.
But I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to.
That's okay. But we've been speaking about game preservation quite a bit this episode, and the PS3, because of how difficult, the struggle they're having to emulate it or anything like that. It seems like it's going to be one of those consoles where everything's like its library is going to be left to die on the actual console itself, and that's a real shame.
It is, but luckily PlayStation 3 Slims are really cheap.
Yeah,
I recommend everybody goes out and get them.
They won't live forever.
PlayStation 3 games are super cheap. So, if you want something, now is the time to go out and really start investing in that. I mean, and I'm loath to say it, but GameStop is a great place to get PlayStation 3 games.
If you can find one that has the full complete in box.
Yes, that is a...
GameStop is notorious for like, oh, hey, manual, throw it away. Oh, hey, sweet box, garbage, replace it with this markered up insert.
Yeah. But, you can still find some relatively good deals. That's the one area where I will say that Facebook Marketplace absolutely is my godsend, is when it comes to like PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 games. I bought lots of games for $10 off people who just want to get rid of them. And make no mistake, now is the time to collect those and Wii U games, because they are all going to disappear.
Yeah. Well, me, Dan, and Tom have mentioned it before, but the only big game retail store in the UK is Game, who are shit. A lot of their stores have actually stopped stocking PS3 and 360 now.
Oh wow, yeah. So see, it's happening already. Hit those flea markets, son. We had a big garage sale thing in our neighborhood last week, and I drove around and I was appalled at the lack of video games out there. So, and then people go like, "Do you collect games? Can I come over?" Like, no, this isn't what this is about. I don't.
Leave me alone.
Hey, Eric, are you going to take advantage of that thing that GameStop are going to start doing?
What?
I told you about the other day. So they're doing a thing called Guaranteed to Love It.
Oh, no. No.
Yeah, and the first game they're going to do it with is Days Gone for PS4. Basically, you buy it.
That's not a good sign.
Basically, you buy it, and then you have 48 hours to return it if you don't like it, and you can get your money back. You get your money back as credit. You don't get it as cash. But yeah, there's going to be a range of games that they release that they have this Guaranteed to Love It thing. So if you can complete games within 48 hours...
No, I will definitely pass on that.
Or if you're Eric and suddenly decide you want it on another system. Off Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, I think you were responsible for like a third of the sales of that game.
I think so, yeah.
No, I do shop at GameStop every once in a while, and it's really because they are in the States anyway. They're the only ones that get like the exclusive collectible editions. Like I bought Sekiro through there, which I am 2 trophies away from my platinum now, which means I eat nails for breakfast and just piss fire every day. I used to be a kind man, but that's all gone. But you know, I'm kind of handcuffed if I want to get those super collectible editions, and I collect art books for games. So, you know, a lot of times they're really the only ones that have it. So you got to use them for something.
Yeah, I occasionally will swing in there if it's a PS3 game we're playing, but outside of that, I'm rarely in there.
Yeah, I'd much rather support local shops, honestly.
Yeah, just going on Arizona alone, when we were over there, your guys' like secondhand game stores are amazing. Like we don't have much like that here. There's the odd place you can find, but nothing on the scale that you guys have. Like the fact that Eric took us to, was it 2 or 3 different kind of secondhand game stores, and they just had like a wealth
of good stuff.
Like you just don't get that here. It's just not a thing. You probably do in London and like some of the bigger cities and stuff like that, but not around here.
Well, there's a $1 million idea. The factory sealed UK retro game store. Back it up, Eric. We're moving.
I'll be bankrupt within 6 months.
Yeah, but only because we can't figure out your currency system, and we'll just undercharge everybody for everything.
Why are we constantly operating in the red?
Yeah, we're idiots.
We mentioned it briefly, but we should probably talk a little bit about it before we dive into Castlevania. Let's talk a little bit about the PS5 and what we've heard.
Yeah,
I've heard it's going to be the follow-up to the PS4.
And it'll be prior to the 6.
Yeah,
and I think it comes in a box.
Be released by Sony?
Are you sure it's not Sony?
Sunway.
It's one of those backwards, like, off-brands you get from, like, North Korea. It's Boney. Yeah, I think, the big announcements were the hardware. They did leave some stuff off that announcement. Like, they didn't mention how much RAM it would have or how fast the RAM would be. But they did talk a lot about that hard drive speed sort of innovation, and that sounds incredible.
Oh, man.
Did you read about that? We lost Mike.
Mike went green. What on earth did he do?
If everything breaks, it's Mike's fault.
Probably is.
Oh, no. There he is.
Yay, it's Mike.
Kind of?
Kind of Mike?
Am I back?
I don't know if you're back. Are you back?
Am I back? I don't think so. It's stopped. You guys have stopped stuttering.
Okay.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so they showed a...
The part of Head's Internet will be played by Mike Tyson.
They showed a loading clip of Spider-Man where you use the fast travel, and prior to this, it would take about, 18 seconds. And this time, they revamped it with that hard drive speed where it took 0.8 seconds to just boop, next spot.
Yeah. They talked about the ability for that machine to stream from and to its hard drive as being something like 20 faster than the fastest PC hard drives, which is incredible.
Which makes me think it's not a standard SSD. It's almost on the line of like an M.2.
Yeah, or an NVMe.
Yeah.
It really could be one of those. When you look at a traditional game console, one of the real advantages that it has is it doesn't have the same bus architecture and interface type between the different slots. So really using a game console that doesn't have an operating system in the middle or a big heavy one, you really could get tremendous gains out of that. And I mean, I think about that in terms of just being able to render big open world games being game changing.
Yeah. Well, and then load times too, because even as games get bigger, load times obviously get longer. I think the most insufferable load time I've ever had to sit through was the tail end of my adventure on Skyrim for PS3. They had that bug where as you played, your game file got bigger, and then every loading screen, it took longer and longer and longer. And as you know, in Skyrim, there's a ton of loading screens. Every time you fast travel, every time you walk through a door, every time you go into your menu. It got to the point where it was taking a minute and a half, if not longer, to go through a door. Like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, they said there was a similar study sort of done around Grand Theft Auto 5, where by the end of that game, it keeps track of your progress, so the save gets bigger and bigger. And they said at the end of the PlayStation 3 generation, if you were really at the end of that game, it could take upwards of 2.5 minutes to load that game. Yeesh. And I mean, that's fucking nuts. So that's a hell of an improvement. Obviously, backwards compatibility is a big deal, especially if they can add some secret sauce and make our old games look better.
I think Zach, you and I talked about this. I think they're going to do something very similar to what Xbox has done, what the Wii U did, where they basically just bake a PS4 into it, whether or not it's an emulated version or not. But the Wii U has an actual Wii in it. You just drop the disc in and boom, hey, let's switch to the Wii interface. And Xbox One is doing it via emulation, but still, I think Sony really needs to hit that where you pop your disc in and you're playing your disc.
Well, and make no bones about it, Xbox, their backwards compatibility, particularly for their OG Xbox games, is a work of art. That is literally a team of people that sits there and ports those games. So it's not easy. It's not cheap. It's got a high cost, probably a low value return. But, and I'm going to wax in unsufferable asshole here for a minute and just gush about Ninja Gaiden 2, which came out on backwards compatibility this week. It is yet another 4K 60 original Xbox title that looks incredible.
It's amazing to look at an OG Xbox game in 4K and be like, yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, they did it with Morrowind. They did it with the original Ninja Gaiden. Actually, when you get ready to play it, Star Wars The Force Unleashed has been secret sauced on the Xbox One.
Yeah, that's what I'm playing. I'm doing the Game Pass version of it.
Yeah.
Me too.
Ooh, buddy.
Yeah. Save yourself the time. Don't play the DLC. Those were shit.
I played through the first level, and like you said, I think I get the gist of the game.
Yeah.
I'm a little sidebar. I'm a little disappointed because to change your lightsaber color, you have to find the correct stones, like the saber stones. I can't remember what the fuck they're called. Some Star Wars fans are gonna fucking kill me now. All I want is a green lightsaber. And I had a look because there is a password system, and you can put it in to unlock all the lightsaber colors. But you can't fucking save your game, so I can't have a green lightsaber.
You can't save your game if you cheat.
If you use cheats, yeah.
Oh, and the password link was insufferable too. It's like 18 characters on the world's slowest keyboard. It was like, remember Metroid, the original one that had like a 3-line, 36-character password? It took 4 hours to enter in. Fuck you. I'll just play this over again.
By the time I'm done, I'll be at the end of it. Do you think, in regard to that, though, do you think that they'll do something similar on the PS5 with PS2 games?
It's real possible. I mean, PlayStation 2 games are easy to emulate because the hardware wasn't, ridiculous at the time. So I absolutely think PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2's software emulation is on the table. Particularly now that big game companies really like the advent of, hey, let's go out and steal somebody's emulator. Which is a thing. That Capcom stick that got announced this week. Have you guys read about that? It's just a big it's literally the Capcom logo with some buttons and some sticks on it. But they totally stole somebody's emulator who is pissed about it.
I mean, they really can't
threatening to pull their work out of it. Well, yeah, because it was licensed by the sort of top end of the emulation chain, but he's pissed. And that thing is ridiculous. It's like $200 and it comes with 10 games. But that is going to be a trend that you see as big game companies not investing in their own emulation. They're just going to go license it or buy it, which is fine because a lot of those emulators are great. Like Dolphin for the GameCube is absolutely fantastic. The Wii emulator, you can actually or the Wii U emulator, you can actually play Zelda in 4K, Breath of the Wild in 4K. If you've got a
that's another console for.
Wait, what? Say that again. Sorry. What?
Yeah, there's a Wii U emulator out there that you can load up, and if your PC has got decent hardware and like GTX 1070 and above in terms of graphics card, you can really play Breath of the Wild in 4K 60, and it's incredible.
Wow.
That's where you see all those people making those mods and putting different Zelda or different characters in the game and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another console that's just completely locked off is the GameCube.
Yeah.
The PS3 and the GameCube, I think, are unless somebody does something about it, are going to be destined to just kind of disappear.
Yeah. Well, and Nintendo has the secret sauce on that one because there were GameCube games working on the Wii just fine.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they took that out of the Wii U.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Well, I think that had more to do with the disk drive because GameCube games are stupidly tiny.
Yeah.
And it requires a special type of drive to accept tiny disks and not get them lost in the mix. And I think they just didn't want to spend money on it.
They didn't want to spend the extra $5 to manufacture.
Yeah, exactly. That cut into the 12-cent profit margin that they got on the game console sales. So now,
because I've never Wind Waker aside, which I played the HD version on Wii U, I've never played a GameCube game.
Ooh. You are missing out. So.
Well.
Ooh, you got Eternal Darkness coming this year, right?
Yeah, I played the Resident Evil remake, but I played that on PS3 and PS4, so that doesn't really count either. But in terms of like that GameCube library, Mario Sunshine, for example, not played. There's a big Star Wars game. Is it Rogue Squadron that's on GameCube that apparently is amazing, and
it still holds up. It's 20 years old. That game
is it Rogue Squadron or Rogue Leader?
Both of them. There's two of them.
But Hazel's got an old Wii. I need to see if it's the one that still plays GameCube games because there's a certain model of Wii where after a certain point it stops.
It's the minis.
GameCube games. No, but of the normal ones as well. I was reading about it. So like how the Wii is designed to stand up on its side. They started releasing them without the stand, and the actual lettering on the front of the console is actually set like it's a line so that when the Wii is laid down, it'd be right rather than stood up. And on those ones, they apparently don't play GameCube games.
Huh.
The easier if it's white and it's got a hatch on top and has GameCube ports, almost guaranteed it can play GameCube.
Yeah. I think hers is a black one, but I think it's the one with the GameCube ports.
So you got to start finding yourself a copy of Eternal Darkness. Then get ready to bend.
Well,
over
I looked on CEX when we brought it up. It was only like £15, I think.
What?
Buy that now.
Yeah, buy that.
That's
absolutely.
an amazing
I paid $50, and that was a steal.
I paid $50 twice because I bought Tom a copy.
Let me have a little looky-loo.
Well, he's looking that up. The other thing, too, that PS5 is positioning itself for is the advent of 8K gaming, which I think we're getting a little ridiculous. 4K is barely even standard at this point.
Yeah. And 8K performance on a Ryzen processor is not going to be great. But think about it this way, even if they could just get their UI and their menus in 8K and then downscale that and super sample it down to 4K, it would look great.
Have you seen the cost of 8K TVs?
Yeah.
Holy shit. A 65-inch, $6,000 at best.
Yep. And it's probably shitty.
Again, I speak as the guy who's not the techie guy like you guys. The thing with the 4K at the moment is on your consoles anyway. You're on your Pro and your Xbox One X. Most games you have to choose. Do you want 60 frames per second or do you want 4K?
Yeah.
Like on the next console generation, if they can just nail 4K and 60 frames, I'm happy.
Well, in the Xbox,
I don't need 8K.
The One X is realistically the only one that can do it native. PS4, correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, is upscaling to it.
In most cases, there are some native 4K 60 games or 4K games, but even a lot of Xbox One games are really, going from 1800p up to 4K.
So I think with the next generation of consoles, 4K will be the standard. They'll be native 4K.
A native 2160p.
Sorry to interrupt. Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, £15.
Buy it. 100% buy it. Don't even think about it. Just buy it.
Yeah, that's a fluke, man. And maybe it was more widely released in the UK.
Is it complete in box though?
They don't tell you on CEX. It could come with a manual. It could not. It's basically just case in a game. Is the minimum you're guaranteed. Really.
Like the actual case.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Then do that because you can buy a manual for a few bucks.
At least they usually do. Anyway, I've never experienced them sending it in something else. So.
Yeah. FYI, if you get your Wii working with with GameCube, make sure that you go and see if you can find the Resident Evil games because they released Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, Nemesis, and then 4 was originally on GameCube, and they are all the best versions of the Resident Evil games. Yeah, but
God, they're not cheap.
No, they're really not, but they are totally worth your time.
The GameCube is probably one of my least favorite consoles to collect for, not only because they're extremely difficult to find, but damn it, they're expensive.
Yeah, they're not cheap. The consoles themselves are cheap, but the games are not cheap.
I'm just checking really quick to see what Eternal Darkness is worth here. Oh, it's actually gone down a little bit in price, Zach.
Oh, really?
Complete is only $40 here.
On where?
I'm just checking price charting.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually since... Oh, dear. Yeah.
Right there.
Since last October, it's gone down about $20.
Well, that's good, because that game will never get released, because Dennis Dyack took his ball and went the fuck home.
It's like, fuck you guys, I'm out of here.
He and all the other Silicon Knights guys have said fuck you to everybody.
So, real quick before we move on, the last thing about the PS5 I want to get you guys' take on this is they didn't go too much into depth on it, but they did say that VR is going to be an integral part of it, as we suspected, and they did say that the current generation of PSVR will work on it. Now,
Whoop whoop.
I think that's
awesome.
only going to be to support PS4 stuff, because they're saying PS4 is going to be compatible with it, therefore the PS4 accessories need to be compatible. I think they would be doing themselves a massive disservice if they were to continue utilizing the same technology for the PS5's version of PSVR. I think if they really want to step up and compete with things like Oculus and HTC, and now with the Oculus Quest coming out, Steam has their own version coming out, they need to switch to IR, and they need to switch to some sort of wireless infrastructure on it.
Yeah, agreed.
Because I think Sony has really proven that VR is a viable gaming source, especially on a home console. So,
Well, look at that state of play they did.
Yeah.
They're essentially their Nintendo Direct kind of thing. What was it? 70% of that was VR.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they
They've
they
got a
have
magic
to
bullet
upgrade
there
it.
with VR.
What's that, Zach?
They've got a magic bullet with VR, because it was interesting, because if you looked at the adoption numbers for all the different VR platforms, Samsung had it forever because they were giving away headsets with every damn phone that you bought. And then PlayStation VR hit their million, and as soon as they started discounting and making bundles and getting a good couple of games out there, they have really taken off in terms of adoption.
I think they've hit 4 million now, Zach.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and that's a really expensive sort of ancillary product. That is nuts that it's taken off that well, but it absolutely has. And I mean, true to form, it's one of the best ways to play VR.
It's the most accessible.
And yeah.
You know, it's not the best way,
not bad,
but
yeah, it's not bad quality.
No.
For what it is.
I'm really curious. I've really got my eye peeled for when the Oculus Quest comes out. I think I'm going to buy that just out of curiosity to see how it stands up, because it's going to be an absolute standalone VR system that's going to be pretty much on par with the PlayStation 4. Resolution will be a little bit off, but I got to see how that tracking is going to work. And I think if Sony takes a page out of that book and goes, okay, we need to change how we're doing our tracking, because just look at, for Beat Saber, for example, you can't utilize light tracking for something like Beat Saber. You have to have the pristine, optimal conditions for it to even be close. You know, they were making the best of a bad situation, but they got to upgrade it to this.
Well, look at me. I can't play, like, we're heading towards summer now. Because, like, fucking winter here, it's overcast near enough every single day, you're fine. But I'm getting to a point now where I can't physically play Beat Saber and some other VR games in the daytime. I have to wait until the evening, because the house I'm renting at the moment, for some reason, instead of having curtains in the living room, it has these blinds in that are like the kind of soft, almost like office type ones, and they don't really block any sunlight. And where my front window is positioned, there's sun shining in all day, whether that's shining behind me on the VR or shining directly towards the camera. I just physically can't play Beat Saber when it's light outside at the moment.
Yeah. I put the LED lights behind one of my TVs in my office, and I had those turn blue when I started, and like I put in Beat Saber and had that going even at night. Like, it just took the saber and put it in front of my face like it was trying to rape me in the mouth. I was like, okay, well, I got to change the color of that light.
So I was reading about this. I think I shared it earlier, but the optimal color for playing Beat Saber is green. So I've got all those LEDs down in my living room that you can change color, and I change all of them to green. So it's just playing in this really obnoxious room. Works perfect.
It's like playing in the Matrix.
Have you seen an improvement?
Yeah, huge improvement.
Yeah, my biggest problem is that I can move my PlayStation out to my living room, and I have tons of space, but my office is not very wide. So I end up standing too close to the TV unless I push my couch all the way back. And it's just kind of an annoyance right now. But I think, you know, when I do upgrade to the PlayStation 5, I think that'll probably end up being a living room device specifically for VR.
Yeah.
Because Zach, have you thought about possibly getting some sort of USB extender for the actual camera itself and having, because you don't have to face the TV for Beat Saber, you just have to face the camera. Have you thought about maybe getting a longer wire for it so you can just position it the camera elsewhere?
I can do it, but honestly, all the stuff's like hidden. Like all my cables are wall hid already. So
okay.
It seems like a much bigger deal for a game that I play. But I can play it fine. But it's an annoyance for like as we get more into VR and there's more sort of mobility and they release more things that have you move around more. My office is just not a good spot for it. Yeah. But my living room's huge, so I won't have any problem in there. I seriously, when I upgraded my PC, or it will be. I have all the stuff coming, and I'm seriously looking.
That's
at
a subtle
HTC
dig,
Vive
wasn't it,
setup.
Zach?
Yeah, it was. It hurt, didn't it? Feel it.
It didn't go unnoticed. I'll have you know that I've got a page up where I'm building parts right now. So
just for the listeners, 3 weeks I've been listening to Eric talk about upgrading his PC, and I'm gonna do it. And I talked to him the next day. Nah, I didn't order shit. So,
God damn it! I have a feeling I'm gonna be coming home with a bunch of fucking parts today.
Yep. I could just feel my voice in the back of your head going, God damn it, just buy something.
No, I did all that shit with those damn Zelda books.
I know. That still hurts my wallet.
Quick side note on that. I know I sent a message to you about it, but I was talking about the differences in the thickness for the Skyward Sword books. And I went to the store and I said, you know what? This is a different book. I need to buy it. So I bought it, did some research on it. Turns out there's multiple variations of each of those books because the ones that were put in the chest are reprints of the original print that was released when the game first came out. So they all have variations. Like, fuck. And I noticed that with the Spirit Tracks book, which is minimally different. It's like maybe 3 centimeters difference. The Skyward Sword one, it's like, it's 3 times as thick. This other one, no, not as much. So now I need to bring a damn tape measure with me when I go to the bookstore.
Jesus Christ.
Yep.
I have too many Zelda books.
I think I'm done.
Excuse me, sir. Do you mind if I measure this book, please?
Do you mind if I measure your wand of Gamalion?
Hold on, look at this. Here. This is the difference in them.
Yeah.
Same fucking book.
I have the Spirit Tracks version, and I kept looking at it like, these are the same. No, they're not the same thing.
Yeah, my Spirit Tracks one is down there.
No.
Do you know what's an easier life, boys? Not fucking bothering.
Nah, I love my art. I love my video game books. I love them,
dude. It's a sickness. That's an even worse sickness than keeping games sealed.
Yeah, and I collect art books, especially like the From Software books. That is not cheap. No. Like every time I turn around, I'm like, well, I guess my kids aren't going to college. Yeah.
Better get a scholarship, Smarty.
Yeah.
Speaking of From Software. Oh, sorry. Go on, Zach.
Oh no, I was just going to say. In fact, I found one of the things that we're going to talk about today is the art style of Castlevania, and the lady that does the art for Castlevania put out an art book, and I had to look it up because I was like, oh, I love her art and I think it's great, and it's fucking $400. Oh, dick. but I'm gonna buy it because it'll look good on my shelf. I'm sorry, you were saying From Software.
It's okay. I was saying From Software. So Eric, you've not really mentioned this on the show, and I thought maybe you probably bring it up yourself, but you've been talking to us about your experience with Sekiro.
Yeah, so I think I'm done with it. And not because I beat it. I think I'm just done with it.
It's rough.
It's not fun. So I'm a huge Souls fan from the days of Demon Souls, arguably back before anybody really enjoyed these massively difficult games. I obsessed over that game for 2 years straight. It was pretty much the only thing I religiously played. And then Dark Souls came out, and then Dark Souls 2, and then Dark Souls 3 came out and it was awesome, and Bloodborne, and I had this huge affinity for it, and I was really interested in Sekiro, and it just isn't tickling my fancy the way that I was hoping it would. The Souls games I always felt were difficult, but they were fair, because there was a multitude of different ways you could approach the game. If you wanted to be range-based, you could, or if you wanted to just be a straight tank, or if you wanted to focus on magic, or if you wanted high defense and slow mobility, or low defense and fast, you could play how you wanted to. Sekiro, you have exactly one style of play, and you better be good at it, or you're going to be fucking terrible. And there's just zero in between. And the boss fights from the Souls games I always felt hard, but they felt fair. I haven't come across one boss fight in Sekiro yet that I feel is fair. It's just in my experience, it's been a situation of, hey, just throw yourself at this wall enough times until you get lucky. And I understand that, like, you get to a point where things click and you get good at it, but you shouldn't have to spend 200 attempts at a boss to be like, oh, now I understand your pattern. I mean, even
Dan said he took about 87 attempts for one of the bosses, didn't he?
Yeah, that's not fun. That doesn't mean you get good. You just got lucky.
Yeah, I've now gone through that game completely twice, and the only thing that keeps me going back is that every time I pick it up and I try and play it like Dark Souls at all, meaning I try and play defensively, I have to stop myself and say, this isn't Dark Souls. This is more like Tenchu.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be Souls-like. But yeah, it definitely is a case where playing Dark Souls, Bloodborne, or Demon Souls will hurt you.
This is why I wanted to bring it up, Zach, because I know you're a massive fan of these games as well, and I've not played any of the From Software games. And Eric's been discussing this in the WhatsApp chat about how, and Dan's mentioned it as well, how you have to retune your mind from these other games. Yeah. And I've been tempted to kind of do an experiment, even though I've not played them before. I was thinking of picking it up myself and playing that one first. But I've got a massive backlog at the moment, and Sekiro is still quite expensive here secondhand, so I haven't bothered. But I wanted to kind of, Eric, to bring this up to kind of hear your thoughts, because I know a lot of people have said a lot of the difficulty has come from being used to the other games. And I know Tom even said that he's had a couple of guys in his office who actually find it quite easy.
Yeah, it's, again, you just have to, it's not Dark Souls, and you want it to be so bad because it plays a lot like a Dark Souls game and it feels a lot like a Dark Souls game, but it is not. And if you, like, and I'll give you an boss that boss that Dan went up against 87 times, he's absolutely right, because if you go into that and you try and be defensive, or you try and roll away, or you try and, skirt the attacks at all, you will die over and over and over again. But if you go up against it and you use the parry timings, and you get used to the fact that Sekiro is really more of a rhythm game. In other words, the bosses are going to carry attacks that are not just, 1, 2, 3, it's 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and get the timing down, then it becomes more elegant, for lack of a better word. But every time, like, if I step away from it for a day and I go back and play it, I try and play it like Dark Souls, and I die almost immediately. And there are exceptions
personally, is
to
that where the difficulty is coming from then, or is it still actually that hard if you went in there fresh, like without playing the others?
I'd be curious to see how you did. I really would. I think without Dark Souls experience, you probably would do it better.
Because I do want to try the From Software games, and I was thinking of, because they're technically on the backlog. I think I've got Demon Souls, which they gave away on PS3 on PS Plus a while ago, so I think I have it. And Eric has said maybe try that one first.
Yeah, that's a good one to start with.
So it's technically on the backlog, but I've also got Bloodborne on the backlog for when they gave that away on PS Plus as well.
I think if you were to jump into
intrigued going in, but I think I might wait now until I can afford have time to play Sekiro. I might just play that first, just for the experiment.
I think Bloodborne is probably the worst place to jump in, because Bloodborne, I
have a lot of love for it.
It assumes that you have played all of the other From games, and it kind of builds upon that. I think if you were to go into Bloodborne first and just beat your head against the wall and figure that out, going back to Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 would be relatively easy. I think Demon Souls kind of stands out on its own because of the world and soul tendency that alter the difficulty a little bit. But for me, Sekiro kind of, like Zach pointed out, it almost teeters on the edge of a fighting game, like the standard one-on-one fighting game, where you have to be frame perfect with things, and I'm just not. I just don't have that affinity. I like the ability to be defensive, and I like to be able to take more than 2 hits in a boss fight and recoup from that.
Now, I will tell you the other thing that, and I had to stop playing it because I picked it up on PC. I got it on Steam, and I played that because my PC is beefy enough to play it. It's 60 frames a second. And that is transformative for that game, because getting your parry timings down is way simpler. And that's one of the things that I look at the PlayStation 4. Like, if you're going to do anything for that version of the game, they need to do just a stock 1080p 60 frames a second mode. Yeah, because it is transformative.
Kind of like they did with Last of Us 2, or with Last of Us 1.
And even Dark Souls 2 on a PlayStation 4 Pro will play at 60 frames a second. The Dark Souls Remastered does. And you find that, like, even in those games, once you play them at 60 frames a second, it really is hard to go back and play them at 30, and play them at half refresh. So, I I had to stop playing Sekiro on PC because it was making the PlayStation 3 or 4 version much, much harder, and I wanted to get my plat. But I think I probably will go back and do a full playthrough. And again, I will tell you that game, I finished it the first time, and I just thought like, oh god, the new game plus is going to be awful, and I have face rolled my way through the entire thing. I'm on a no death run.
That's what
all the way up to the last boss.
That's how the From games typically are, though. Demon's Souls is the exact same way. You get to the end boss, and you're like, okay, that was challenging. Let's see what New Game Plus is about. And the New Game Pluses don't really start to achieve that same level of difficulty until like 5 or 6, New Game 5 or 6, because it goes up incrementally. At least in Demon's Souls 1, it got like 8% harder every time.
Yeah, it's like 7% to every stat.
And I think by the time I stopped playing Demon's Souls, I was on like New Game Plus 9, and it was finally starting to get to the point where I couldn't just blitz through it in 12 to 15 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just Sekiro was just hard. I'm just going to say it like that. There's no easy way around it.
And it's sad because I like it. I'm extremely enthralled with the world, the lore in it. I like how you're an actual character. You're not just this faceless person who doesn't have a conversation. You're a person with a voice and a backstory, and you're interacting, and the world is phenomenal. I don't think that there have been many feudal Japanese games that have been done well. This looks at Nioh and makes Nioh want to pack up and go home. Because until this point, Nioh was the best
samurai ninja game, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Short of Ninja Gaiden or Tenshu, I guess. But From really knocked it out of the park. But I think at least for me, they went too far out of the park with it, and it's just too unfamiliar. And I think maybe someday I'll come back to it, but at this point, I've hung it up, and I don't plan on going back.
Nope, that's fair. I think, like I said, I'm going to get my plat, and this is my one complaint about Sekiro. Sekiro has an insane grind to get your plat, and I've got 2 trophies left. One of them just required a second playthrough because you get an in-game item that lets you upgrade all your prosthetics, and there's only 6 of them in the game, so you have to go through a second time to get the second set of 6 to upgrade all of them. But the skill tree is absurd. So skills in Dark Souls work like souls, so every time you kill an enemy, you get souls, for lack of a better term, and it adds to your experience bar. Well, when you die, you lose half of your experience.
Yes.
And this sounds easy, but it's not. Because what happens is you get into the later end of the skill trees, and it's like usually skills are 2 or 3 bars of skill to upgrade. When you get to the end game stuff, they're all like 9 bars of skill.
Yeah.
So I mean, it really is a grind fest.
And all it takes is one. And even still, the enemies at the beginning of the game are just as deadly as the enemies at the end. So it takes just one fuck up, and boom, there goes 4.5 bars.
Now, there are good farming spots in Sekiro. I will say there's a spot that I can farm probably 100,000 XP in less than 10 minutes. But it's just, I don't like that style of grindiness in games because it really just forces you into it.
At least it's not Demon Souls version of grind where you had to get I can't remember what it was, but it was like
drop,
you had the shards, the slabs, and the chunks, and then the volcanic ones, they would only drop like 3 in an entire playthrough, and then one of them you had to get, I think you had to get like 60 or 70 of them, and the drop rate was less than 1% on an enemy that appeared less than 10% of the time. Dude, it was insane. That's the one trophy I don't have on Demon Souls. I was in the process of cheesing the system when you could go online, drop one of the items for your friend to pick up, and before he picked it up, you logged out of the game. So you left, and you still technically had it in your inventory, but he would pick it up as well, and then you just rinse and repeat. You could duplicate them.
Yeah, I had to cheese in Sekiro because I did not want to play it through it 4 times to get through. And I will say that save stating in that game, and I use my USB thumbstick, you can do it to the cloud. Just, literally go dump your game save file, and then if you die, go back and reload it. But there are 4 endings. One of the endings you get super early on in the game. I mean, it's like 2/3 of the way through the game. And then if you want the other 2, you have to go through this other huge section of the game. But I did not want to do that like 4 or 5 times, so I save stated my way through that, and it was fine. But I will tell you that there are some bosses in that game that are rock hard that I cheesed my ass off. In fact, the sort of big bad Bloodborne boss in the game, and I won't spoil anything else about it other than there is one, I found that you could get him stuck behind a tree. And that was the only way I could beat him. I've seen other people beat him, and I was like, there's no fucking way I can remember all that.
Yeah.
So I cheesed the hell out of him, and I didn't feel bad at all about it.
Yeah.
So,
Works, man, whatever works.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted that. I needed that trophy, damn it.
It's unfortunate, and maybe I'm just at a point right now in what's going on in life that I just don't have the time nor the patience for it. I've got enough stress with work as it is. Like, I don't need to sit down and be stressed playing a game, so I'm going to throw in some Ace Combat or something else. Which is
what you can always throw in?
Yeah, I mean,
you can always throw in Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Oh, man. Segway!
Thank you. It's my first.
We popped his Segway cherry.
Yeah. No, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is my absolute palate cleanser. I play through the game to 200.6% and then immediately start over. And I play for 10 or 15 minutes at a time, but I have had that game on repeat for years.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I've always known about you is that you play that religiously. I think we all, if we had to choose one favorite game of all time, I mean, that's, at least in my opinion, that's yours.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's stuck between that and Bloodborne now. And I didn't realize that I had played Bloodborne enough to do that, but I kind of have. But Castlevania is definitely my jam, man. It's everything that I want out of like that style of game.
See, and I'm of that type too, where anytime anybody talks about, it's a Metroidvania, I immediately lose interest. And
yeah,
to be fair, we did Castlevania Symphony of the Night 4 years ago, maybe 5, with I think it was with me and Oliver and Kevin. I don't remember who it was. It was part of the old crew, but anyway, it was the first time I'd ever actually completed a Castlevania game, and I remember walking out of it going, "Holy shit, that was fucking awesome!" And I've tried to play Metroidvania games since, like Hollow Knight, or Guacamelee. I just don't like them. But Castlevania Symphony of the Night, there is something about it that just touches me the right way.
Yeah, it's the molester uncle. It's really a good game in terms of it's got a great art style. It's got friggin' amazing music. And generally, in fact, that's one of the things that I was going to talk about related to Symphony of the Night is that when you go back and you read some of the interviews that Igarashi and what's the other gentleman's name? The actual director, Igarashi, is kind of the man for Castlevania from about 1997 on. He produced all of the games. Well, he was the assistant producer on Castlevania. So when he went into it, he said, I want a game that doesn't stress players, that they can play for a really long time, and that kind of relaxes people.
Did he play any of the bosses?
Well, I mean, true to form, most of that game is really easily controllable. It's how much you want to level up before you get to a boss.
Yeah,
really determines how hard it is. But it's one of those games where it absolutely removes stress, because as long as you're good about using its save system, which is stupid.
Which I wanted to give Tom a bunch of shit about, because he didn't figure it out right away. He he sent us a message. He's like, well, I just played an hour and a half of Castlevania and died and had to start over. I'm like, didn't you use the save rooms? Like, well, I walked into a few of those rooms with the big red orbs, and like, well, maybe I'll get an item and come back to these later. You didn't walk up to it, like, try to investigate it?
I don't know how I didn't figure it out. It's 2D gaming 101. If you see something you're not sure what to do with it, press up.
Yeah, you press up.
Especially when it's just a big random piece of geometry in a room with nothing else. You know?
Exactly. Well, I'm going to say from the outset that I did use save states.
Oh, good for you.
I did not. I played the PS1 Classic on the Vita.
Oh, nice. What'd you play it on, Mike?
I played the PS1 ROM on a PSP emulator on my Vita.
Okay. Fair enough. So you guys,
God
I was just going to say
dead
like this.
right now.
You both definitely played the best versions of this game.
Yeah, the PS1. I wanted to play that Saturn version, but good God, I don't want to spend that money.
Do not play the Saturn.
No.
The Saturn version is shit.
Yeah, but I want it just because it's
expensive.
Yeah.
What's wrong with the Saturn version?
So the Saturn didn't do a lot of things in 2D terribly well, and one of them was it didn't output to a standard screen resolution size. It did like 512 by 512. Well, the affect of that is when they went to crop the game and put the actual image in there, it stretched both vertically and horizontally the game. So it's
so Dan would have loved it.
Yeah.
It is just fugly.
We know what to get Dan for Christmas: a Saturn and a Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Also, the Saturn didn't do transparency effects at all. So like in a lot of the menus, and there's a lot of dialogue in this game and a lot of menu pop up, like instead of having this clear, seamless, transparent background, it was all checkerboarded and you couldn't see through it. The Saturn version also it wasn't worse music, but it was definitely worse load times to get to the music. And a lot of times the Saturn version would skip the music. So you'd walk in a room and it would just start restarting the song every time you did it. And it's stupidly expensive, as Eric pointed out. I own a copy of it. It's a sealed copy, and it sits in a safety deposit box because it's so ridiculously expensive for what it is. But the PlayStation original version was definitely the best version to play. I say that because the Requiem collection that they just released for PlayStation 4, which I think Dan was playing, is actually based on a PlayStation or a PSP port that they did back in 2010.
They ported this to PSP?
Yeah, it's in the Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles.
Oh, shit. I was just looking at that the other day. I thought about picking that up.
Interesting.
I have that here.
Get it?
This.
Yes. Yeah. That's not too terribly expensive either.
No, it's not terribly expensive. It contains both the Rondo of Blood, which was the sort of precursor to this game. But it's an upgraded version of the Rondo Blood. So how they did, do you remember when they redid Mega Man Powered Up? And
Do I remember? He asks.
They also did Ultimate Ghost and Goblins.
Yes.
They did it in kind of a 3D style, so it is the 3D style. But in that game is a fully unlockable version of Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Oh, nice.
Now that sounds great, because it's 2 games in one, until you realize that they retranslated the entire game. And they re-recorded all the audio. So all the corny, hokey, what is man, a little miserable pile of secrets, like that's all gone in those versions. And it's supposed to be much more serious, but it loses some of its charm. But it is still an absolutely fabulous game. I highly recommend the PSP version, because that version of Rondo of Blood is super good. And really, up till the PlayStation 4 Requiem collection, Castlevania Rondo of Blood, which again is the precursor to Symphony of the Night, the only way to buy it was on it's a PC Engine game, and it's a terribly expensive PC Engine CD game. So not only do you have to have the terribly expensive game, but you have to have the terribly expensive console you need to play it. So the Requiem collection is a good deal in terms of being able to play a game that was never really released in the States. There was a version of it released on the Super Nintendo called Castlevania Dracula X, but it is a really super easy port of a game that was much better on other platforms.
Interestingly enough, I was reading that apparently it was originally being designed for the Sega 32X.
Yeah, and I think that was it was originally released for the 32X because that was it wasn't Saturn led by PlayStation by like 9 months or something like that. At least in Japan, I think the PlayStation came out first. Am I right on that?
I'm not sure. Let me have a little look for you. Carry on, I'll have a look.
I know that Castlevania Symphony of the Night was a big risk for Konami and Sony, because it was a 2D game in an era where only 3D games were being made for everything. So when it came out, it got tremendous critical acclaim. I think it's like a 93 on Metacritic or something crazy like that. But it didn't sell very well, which is why it's stupidly expensive today, because there's just not that many copies around.
Yeah, I think the last time I saw it out in the wild was at a video games market thing that was going on in a town not far from here. They do like a yearly thing where they just have like guys go with stalls and things like that, similar to what you guys went to in Missouri. But I remember seeing a copy of it there, and I'm sure it was complete, but I think it was like 120 quid, something like that.
No, yeah, it's not a cheap game. Oh, and you had the UK version, so you have the much cooler cover than we do. Ours is super lame. It's just the castle and a moon in the background. In the UK, you got all the Japanese artwork, which was just much better.
To answer your question from before, Zach, the original PlayStation, Japan was 3rd of December 94. Saturn was November 22nd, 94.
Huh. Well, I guess they were in the same ballpark. But yeah, the big risk came because, again, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is almost entirely 2D. In fact, they kind of ham-fisted in some of the 3D elements, like the cutscenes in the beginning and the end, and the save point were definitely kind of nudges by Sony to say, like, hey, you need to get some 3D stuff in here because that's what our console is really built to do.
Yeah,
but
that period of time is always very interesting to me. Anyway, like moving on from the 60-bit era into N64 and PlayStation. I mean, we always say now how PlayStation and N64 games, that sort of era, that they're so fucking ugly now because obviously they were the early 3D games and everything had to be 3D. We're done with that 2D,
regardless of how good it was.
Everything is, like everything has to be. And there's a resurgence of 2D platformers now. Look at The Messenger and things like that. Celeste.
Well, what's cool about that, and you and I have talked about that, Mike, with the resurgence of the 2D stuff, is that we look at the 2D stuff now, and it's exactly how we imagined it was back in the day. You go back and play some of those old 2D games, you're like, ooh, this isn't what I remembered.
Yeah. Some of them hold up, like your Super Marios and things like that. But it's interesting that this game did come out on PlayStation in its 2D form as it is, because to me anyway, because of all of that, everything 3D, and it worked. It definitely worked because I've never played this before. The only Castlevania I've played before is when we did Castlevania 4 for the show. If you remember,
I liked that one.
Did it.
Actually, I take this back. I did beat Castlevania 4. But yeah, that was a great game.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and it was interesting to me that there was a 2D Castlevania on PlayStation to begin with. So going into this, I was quite excited because you don't get that much 2D stuff on the PlayStation. There's the odd thing here and there, but this, it looks fantastic. This game really, really does. Alucard as well. When you're playing as Alucard, and he has that kind of sort of phantom version of himself always following him. Like always looks like he's moving really fast because of it.
Especially when you're moonwalking, which, let's face it, everybody just moonwalks to this whole game because it's the best mechanic ever.
I thought I was the only one that was doing that because I was getting frustrated with how slow it was. Like, I was just going to turn around. I'd walk into a room, I'd turn around and just press triangle through the room.
Yeah.
I kept forgetting that was an option, and like I'd be getting killed. I'm like, oh yeah, I can fucking dash backwards, can't I?
Yeah, it's really not that much of a useful mechanic in the game. It's kind of like the shield.
Yeah.
The shield is really just there for fan service. In fact, Igarashi has a video out there somewhere where he talks about it, and he said, yeah, we were like 75% done with the game, and then we were all in a meeting room, and everybody just admitted, like, yeah, the shield is stupid. And then they sat there like, well, fuck it, it's in the game now,
There were a few instances where I used the shield. There was one boss that was like a giant plant that would shoot spikes out that would cause like 80 damage. I'm like, I'm just going to stand here with my shield and inch forward every time. That was the only time I used it. It was kind of dumb to have the multiple weapons, so you can equip left hand, right hand, and then a bunch of other crap, but I never had two weapons. It's like, well, here's my one powerful weapon. I'm just going to attack with that. Why would I attack with a lesser powerful weapon?
Right. Well, I think the shield was supposed to be more instrumental in the game. And again, because none of the developers liked it, they just kind of like, whatever. They did put in a weapon in the game that utilizes shield. It's called the shield rod. And if you equip the shield rod with the various shields in the game and do a super move, you get a special effect for every shield. So, like, if you use the, the leather shield that you get almost immediately in the game, like, it drops a giant cow in the game. Which is really kind of funny. Yeah. And then, like, one of the other ones is the Medusa shield, which if you use that with a shield rod, it turns everything to stone. So, there are some uses for it.
I didn't know this. Like, I assumed it'd be more powerful if I use it at the same time as the shield. Because I think it does say, doesn't it, like, powers up with shields or something like that. But I never used it because I think the sword I had at the time was much more powerful than it, so I just stuck with that. I was surprised at the RPG elements of this, though. When I loaded it up and realised, you equip different armours and things like that. Now, again, going back to, I've only played Castlevania 4 now. Am I right in thinking that Castlevania 4 is a bit of an odd one because it's not Metroidvania, so to speak? It's more linear, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, most of the Castlevania, in fact, there were really, until Symphony of the Night came out, there were really only two non-linear games, and that was Symphony of the Night, and the other one was
Simon's Quest?
Nintendo. Simon's Quest, yeah. And Simon's Quest was definitely sort of the blueprint for this game. It just sucked in every way compared to it. Because it just Simon's Quest, you can play it and go like, this feels like a half-finished game, and especially the US version where it's mistranslated and like all the super secret stuff that you're supposed to do doesn't appear anywhere in the dialogue.
Yeah, I haven't played it, but I watched Game Grumps play through it, and like some of the bullshit that you have to do. Like, isn't there one bit where you have to go to a wall and kneel against the wall or something like that?
Yeah, with a red crystal equipped. And like, if you read the Japanese version of it, like it says, like, go to this wall, kneel here for a couple seconds. The red crystal is important. In the US version, it's like, I am Aaron.
Like, I've always wanted to kind of suggest doing Simon's Quest for the show, and I'm just like, I feel like we'd just get fucking nowhere.
Oh yeah, I occasionally will pop in Simon's Quest just to play, because I played that as a kid. Never completed it, but I love the music. I love the town aspect of it and the whole curse thing. But yeah, we would get nowhere with it.
Yeah, actually, there's a really good fan hack which brings over the real translation of the game, and adds it's a couple of things back into the game, and it makes like the end boss harder, because Simon's Quest is notorious for you get to the end boss, and if you have this special item, you can beat him in one hit, and there are really no other bosses in the game. So I think that playing a fan hack of that might actually be better than playing the original Simon's Quest. But who needs that when you have Symphony of the Night and all 30 bosses and
there's so many,
both castles and all that? Yeah.
Mike, you and I talked about this as well, and Zach, this might stir the pot a little bit, but Symphony of the Night is amazing to a point, and then it becomes a slog. The first half of the game is incredible. Never once like, I'm tired of this. And then you invert the castle. And then it's like, great, you know everything you just did? Now you get to do it upside down and backwards. And it's twice as difficult.
Mm-hmm. Easily twice as difficult. Like that first boss in the inverted castle, the big raven guy.
Yeah, so hard.
He's just a brick wall to most people. And in fact, I think that's probably one of the reasons that they put in the inverted castle. It was, hey, you can play this game all the way to completion and beat it and walk away from it and be fine. But if you really like it, here's this other new version of it to play.
But
and
it
is much more difficult. Huh?
Here's the thing for me, though. In terms of pacing, like, I feel like me personally, I mean, I think I got to about 130% completion. I didn't finish it. But I feel like when I got to that point where the inverted castle... Now, I knew about the inverted castle. It wasn't a surprise to me. I knew that was part of the game. But I don't know if it's just because I misinterpreted it, but I always thought that the inverted castle was kind of like an extra mode. Like, oh, you've completed it. Here you go. Like, an extra mode. Do it again, like, but harder. I didn't realize it was actually the full story you had to then do the inverted castle. So maybe it was my own doing, but I felt like when I got to the end of that first castle, that felt like a perfect place for it to end. Like, it honestly was drawing to like a conclusion. I figured all these bits out. I used a guide twice on two things that I couldn't figure out going through it, which I was quite proud of because there are some difficult things in there to figure out. Got to that fight with Richter. I had the holy glasses. I knew I needed the holy glasses from Dan mentioning it. I didn't use a guide for those either, so I got there with that and beat the spirit above him. And I was just like, oh, this is nice. Credits are going to roll in a moment. Nope, the inverted castle is actually part of the fucking game. I was so ready for it to end there. And my enjoyment levels of the game, not because of the difficulty, but my enjoyment levels of the game, because I thought it was going to end, it was nicely paced, dropped, like massively dropped. I didn't hate it, don't get me wrong, but going through it most of the time with a smile on my face, like, definitely ceased.
I will tell you that the second part of the castle is definitely like a new game plus mode, because you're right, it is absolutely harder. It's harder to navigate. And even though, you knew the castle from the offset, just navigating it in reverse, while it speaks to amazing game design, it is definitely much, much harder to navigate. And that's where you really start to pick up the stuff that you need to navigate through it in a reasonable way. And by that, I mean, you upgrade the mist to poison mist. Well, the first upgrade that you get to it lets you stay in mist form. The second version of it turns you into a fart cloud that's just venomous to everybody.
Side note, really quick on that. The mist, the mist form is not really intuitive to use.
No, it's stupidly hard.
You have to be...
Like, why do I have to press these two buttons?
Yeah, well, the one I was playing, you just have to press L, and you pop into fart mode, but it immediately kicks you back to dude mode. So you have to, like, if you're going into this grate, you have to be running and, like, fart move through it at the same time in order to stay into your little cloud of stench. Otherwise, there were so many times where I'd get halfway through and then it would go, nah, and kick you back out. And you're like, all right, nah. And you just sit there and waste all of your power trying to fart your way through this grate.
Well, and not just that, but it's because you don't have power of fart mode. Power of fart mode allows you to stay in that mode. It's not just an instant transition. You just stay in that mode until you let it go. And that's a difference between the version that you played. The original version, it was Wolf was L1, which is utterly useless. Power of Wolf. It really just helped you get to one spot that you really could have done another way.
Side note with Wolf, I had to ask Dan if I was doing something wrong, because you know the huge bridge that you need to get across, which you need the double jump to get across. Yep. When I got to that, I assumed, because I managed to get across the first bit with the wolf running and jumping, so I assumed, that must be what I have to do. And I spent a while doing it, and I got to a point where I just said, because I didn't want to check a guide yet, I said to Dan, like, am I doing this right? Because I'm going to go off and explore elsewhere, but if you're supposed to use the wolf and I'm just fucking it up, like, I don't want to go searching elsewhere when I'm doing it right in the first place. And he was like, no, you definitely need the double jump for that. Like, fuck.
Yeah, I've done it as the wolf, but it is super hard because you have to dodge all the skulls to do it. And then, what is it after that? Bat is R1, which is Bat is infinitely more useful, but until you get power of Bat, like, you just run through your MP. And then you get Mist. Well, once you get to the second castle, you start getting the ability to power those up a little bit more. And it just makes the game a lot more accessible. Like, Power of Mist is one of those where, I just ran through this room and I want to run back to the save point. Okay, I'll just Power of Mist all the way back down to it and not lose my life. One of the things that, and I don't know how long we can really talk about Symphony of the Night, because it really is just a Metroidvania game. You go from left to right, you hit stuff, you get items, you go on to a next level.
Yeah.
It's a very simple concept. It's got some bosses that are ridiculous. But one of the things that makes it interesting is it's got all these little secrets that you would never know unless you just stumbled upon them or read them in a guide. Like, do you know that there's an entire magic system in the game?
No.
Where... Yeah, once you get
the scrolls. You get the scrolls from the librarian.
Yeah, you can buy some of them, but some of them there aren't scrolls for. You just have to figure out, like, one of the best ones. It's Dark Metamorphosis. And Dark Metamorphosis is like a fireball, but starting back and going up above as opposed to down below, and square. And Dark Metamorphosis allows you for enemies that bleed, so like bats and humans.
Yeah, I got that one.
Yeah. It allows you to recoup your health. There's Soul Steal is another one where if you're halfway through a fight with a boss, you can hit Soul Steal and it'll suck like 80 MP or 80 HP out of him.
Sweet.
So, it's got a ton of little secrets like that, but it's also got just weird oddball secrets. Like, did you make it to the bottom of the tower and look through the telescope and see the boatman?
Yeah. Yes.
Did you notice there was a bird down there?
Yes.
So the first time that you go down there, the bird will come and land in the nest. If you come back there, the bird will come back and there will be two birds in the nest. And if you come back a couple hours later, there will be an egg in the nest. If you come back a couple hours later, the egg will hatch. And then the birds come back and feed those birds. And then the last time that you come back, that bird grows up big enough and flies off and makes a nest of its own. Like, there's 1,000 little details in the game just like that, which you would never see unless you were really looking for them. And it speaks to the level of detail in that game, which is just ridiculous.
I have a confession. I didn't know that there was a wolf form.
Oh, never. Yeah. You get that in the elevator.
Never used the wolf. Like, I saw the elevator. How did you get into it?
You have to. So in that same area with the elevator, there's a big device with what looks like a big flaccid penis hanging down.
Yeah, it's in the top left of that area, isn't it?
Yeah, you go whack the penis and it turns on the mechanism that turns on the elevator.
I missed the penis. Otherwise, I surely would have.
Useless anyway.
Yeah, the only reason that you really need the wolf is to open one secret area, which is right at the beginning of the game. So right when you come in the castle, there's a big rock that you can knock a hole into, and it's got a meat, and you can walk out the other side of it. So if you walk through that in wolf form and in bat form, in the bottom left corner of that room, a secret door opens up, and there's a hidden area. Yeah. And hidden areas in this game are aplenty.
How do you get through the water sections?
So eventually, you really just have to stay out of the water until you get the holy item, which is a snorkel.
Which is a fucking snorkel.
It's a fucking snorkel.
Is it holy symbol or something like that?
Yeah, holy symbol. It's a snorkel.
And It makes water stop hurting you.
Yes. Up till then, water is corrosive, but with a snorkel, it's just fine.
Because it's not even that he's drowning, because you can go in like knee-height water and it still hurts him, or go through a waterfall. But that was one of the things you were saying about secret areas on this. Now, I know Castlevania is famous for having its bullshit secret areas that you don't necessarily know about unless, you know about. One of the times I had to use a guide is because I found the ferryman in the water bit.
Yep.
He took me over. I picked up the item, I can't remember what it is, that makes you be able to summon the ferryman elsewhere. Yep. And I couldn't figure out where it was that I summoned him. That's where I looked at the guide. Because that's when you go to a certain place, summon him, that's how you get the snorkel.
Yep.
And it's hidden behind a secret area below the ground where you have to hit the ground. Now, without me checking a guide, is there a part in the game that shows you how to do that?
So that's where familiars become important. So did you get any of the familiars in the game?
I got the demon, the bat, the fairy, and the ghost.
So depending on where you are, it's usually fairy. And there's two fairies. There's one in the in-game castle that's spelled different. It's like Faeeri. But the fairy familiar will absolutely point out. She'll say, "Hey, there's something that looks different about that wall," and she'll point at it, or she'll go sit on it. The ghost familiar doesn't do a lot, as I recall. The demon familiar, you can get to certain points well below that water area. There's another hidden area down there where there are like big round circles on the wall. And if you have him leveled up enough, he'll go hit those.
I was just going to ask you what that was, because there was a section that I knew you could go one way, and there was this little circle in the rock. Like, well, can't get that.
Yeah.
I use the demon quite a lot, because obviously you could use him in battle. I like the way he goes, die!
I completely forgot about the familiars until halfway through the inverted castle. So I think I made this game a little bit harder for myself than I needed to.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, later when you get... actually, my favorite familiar in the game is the sword familiar, which is just a great big sword that follows you around and fucking wrecks everybody. But the catch is to the sword familiars, you can't use him too much, because eventually when he levels up all the way, and I think it's to level 50 or something like that, he actually it ceases being the sword familiar and it just turns into a sword, which by that point in the game is way worse than any sword you can get. Which is something else we should talk about, which there are in-game weapons in this game. And if you find any of those, everything in the game becomes a joke.
Where do you find those?
So there's a couple that you can farm. There's one stupid enemy in the Forbidden Castle, and it's Lomo or Shlomo or something like that.
Oh, the little kind of Igor dudes.
Yeah, No. This one looks like he always appears in areas where there are just the floating heads. And he's one of the floating heads, but he appears where there are guys that look like scarecrows on crucifixes. And I think they're called Shlomos. But if you kill them enough, they can drop a weapon called Chrysogrim. And Chrysogrim is it's like a power wave that you just hit the button and it just keeps waving out in front of you. And if you level that up all the way, you can kill Dracula in 3 hits. And the rest of the bosses become like 2-hit wonders. Could
have done with that during Beelzebub. Jesus.
There's Ossifoon. Did you guys know that there were special moves per weapon? Did you see any of those?
No.
So when you start the game, the very first weapon that you have is the Alucard sword, and it has a special move. So if you do a fireball and then hit, just like a Ryu fireball and hit square, you actually project yourself about 10 feet out in front of you and then turn around and hit backwards, but you become immune while you do it.
And there are a bunch of
weapons in the game. So when you're in the game, when you're with your starter weapon, before you ever fight death, you can see how it works. Just do a Ryu fireball in square, and it does the weapon's super move, which is, again, it's like a reverse slash.
We didn't know any of this.
Later on, so Chrysogrim's another one that just is all powerful. There's Ossifoon, which, as opposed to doing the reverse slash, just does a front slash, and then the upgraded version of that is it drops off one of the harder enemies in the game that you can farm for experience points, and you would want to do that if you wanted to go for 200.6, because some of the areas are just, you need lots of health to explore. Masamune is a one-hit kill sword almost immediately, and as you continue to level it up, like, you can clear out whole rooms in a single shot. So there are lots of weapons in the game that are kind of just like that. And then there are items that you can get to help increase the drop rate. So there are a couple of items. Oh gosh, I wish I'd written this down. I can't remember.
I think I definitely picked up something that said that
it's like arcane gem or arcane relic.
Rare items would appear.
Yeah. So when you go to farm things, like the gold Medusa heads, you've both run into those, right?
Yes. Fuck those things.
The ones that petrify you.
Yeah, gold Medusa heads will drop a Medusa head shield. And that's the one that makes you immune to being stoned. So, Eric, you had mentioned being in the clock room and having a really hard time because it's just a bunch of shit. It's a bunch of like those winged ladies and a bunch of Medusa heads at the same time. Well, if you have the Medusa head shield, that'll keep you from getting turned into
I had the Medusa, or I had the mirror armor too.
Yeah, mirror armor does help. Absolutely. Yeah. What else? There's the oddball little things like, Eric, I think you found the secret boots, right?
The what?
The secret boots.
Yeah.
Didn't you
increase your height by 1 pixel?
It says
I
increases your height.
Yeah.
And if you look at it and you compare them, it secretly increases your height by 1 pixel. That's all it does.
See, I presumed it might make you jump higher, and I was stood there for ages, like equipping in and unequipping them to see if he was jumping higher or not. And then later on, one of the relics you can get is actually increases the height of your jump anyway. So
yeah. There's increase the height of your jump, and then there's the gravity boots, which lets you do...
Yes, I got those as well.
Those are the ones that let you do the down-up jump, right? Or is that just the double jump?
No, gravity boots were a relic, and they just said increases the height. No, I don't know, I'm getting mixed up. I definitely got something called gravity boots.
So, and I can't remember the name, God, I'm awful at this. There's one item that lets you do a double jump, and then there's one item...
though, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's one item that allows you to do, I think it increases the height of your jump, but it also, if you are standing still and you hit down, up, and jump, it'll let you do a super jump straight up.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Now, this becomes important because when you went to see the librarian, did you notice that he's sitting on a chair over a big hole? It's like a toilet.
Yeah, I just presumed he's shit down there.
Yeah, so you can actually get into that room and then do that super jump underneath him, and every time you bounce him in the air, he can drop a rare item.
Your voice got out at the end. He drops what?
He drops rare items.
Yeah, I just assumed that was
Every
his.
time
He was his toilet.
Nope. It's a secret area that you can get to, and every time you bounce him, he has a chance to drop a rare item, and that's actually where you get one of the secret endgame weapons, which is called the Axe Lord armor. So when you equip the Axe Lord armor, you turn into one of the Axe Lords for a game. If you beat the game with that item in your inventory and start a new game and title it Axe Lord, you can play through the whole game as the Axe Lord. Subsequently, if you finish the game any other way you finish the endings in the Requiem collection, and you guys won't have this because you're playing the PlayStation 1 version. Well, you'll have one of them. You can enter the word Richter as your name for the new game, and it'll allow you to play the whole game as Richter Belmont, who is the bad guy.
Yeah.
And makes the game tremendously hard because the game is set up to play as Alucard with a bunch of special items, and you don't get any of those. You just have a standard health bar. It's just fucking rough.
I was surprised that it's not a whip-based weapon, because Castlevania traditionally, as far as I know, it's always been a whip-based kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was very, very surprised when, I start as this character, Alucard, who, by the way, is like a cool character as well. It's one of those games where you boot it up and you start playing as a character and
Mike,
this is a fucking cool guy.
Do you know why he's named Alucard?
Is it Dracula backwards?
It is. I wonder if Dan gets it.
Dan, do you get it, Dan?
We'll wait for 2 weeks to see if you got.
Just bring it up. Make sure you ask him. Zach wanted to know if you got it.
But yeah, speaking of the beginning of the game as well, I liked how it did that whole... Is it Wonder Boy 3 we played? Where you start off kind of almost like facing the big bad with all your equipment, and then you get all your equipment taken off you. That was a nice little callback to when we played Wonder Boy, which was a game I loved us playing. So,
well, and it starts you off super powerful, and then
you're
you're just shit. Because the first time you hit that skeleton and it takes 8 hits, you're like, oh, god damn it. This is going to be much harder than I thought. What else in terms of secrets? Yeah, so you can play through the whole game as Richter. which is amazingly hard. And then if you're playing the Saturn version or the Requiem collection that just got released, if you enter Maria, you can actually play the whole game as Maria Renard, who is the blonde lady who gives you the holy glasses. Yeah. And man, let me tell you, I'm going to have to do a stream of that one because it's fucking insane. She throws bunnies at people instead of having weapons.
Jesus Christ.
Like every time you do a high jump, like a bird comes and picks her up by the shoulders. She launches frogs out of her ass. It's fucking insane.
Is she good?
But it's so much fun. I wouldn't quantify it as good. It's just very different. It's as hard as playing as Richter, but it's just insane. And she has Richter doesn't get special moves, or he's got a couple that are kind of innate to him, like the backflip. But Maria gets items just like Alucard does, and every one of them is just more insane than the last one. Like she has one where she spawns a pterodactyl. It's nuts. It's like playing a cute 'em up at that point.
So another question for you, Zach, the Oracle of Castlevania. So the other time I had to consult a guide. So in the original castle, there's the clock room where there's an exit, 2 exits to the top. No, 3 exits at the top.
Yes.
An exit at the bottom, and then obviously your standard ones to the side. And there's different ways of getting through the exits. So, for example, the top left statue disappears every other minute of the clock and things like that. Now, the reason why I had to consult a guide is because I didn't... Well, I've got 2 questions for you, actually. So, I couldn't figure out how to open the one on the right, which turns out you have to get the stopwatch weapon, go in there, activate the stopwatch, and it disappears. Right, so the first question I'll insert, does it ever tell you that in the game?
Nope, nowhere.
No, so you just have to fucking figure that out. Okay, and the question I was going to go to, so when I had to research that to find out what I was doing, that was, I spotted on some other bits that talked about the time in the game and things like that. And I'm sure I saw something about the Saturn version of the game uses the game clock to decide whether it's night and day or something like that. Whereas in the PlayStation, because it doesn't use obviously the PlayStation didn't have a system clock, it doesn't do anything like that. So, for example, you have there's some armors later on where there's one that's like
better at
it's
night,
more powerful in the day, and one that's better at night. And apparently on the Saturn version, depending on what actually time of day it was, would differentiate. Whereas on the PlayStation version, because it didn't have a system clock, it was just how far you were into the game. So, is that system clock thing
based on the number of saves too?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it'll change the weather, and like sometimes you'll just get random weirdness, like it'll just start raining, especially in the outside clock tower where the elevator is, and that is based on when you save. But yeah, go back to your question. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, is there much more kind of incorporation of the system clock into the Saturn version, which you've kind of just answered anyway? But
no, not that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's something because that game has 1,000 little details. But I know that, for instance, the system clock definitely controlled the clock tower clock, the one you were just talking about that opened every other minute. Yeah. That was more random on the Saturn version than it was in the PlayStation version. The PlayStation version, you just had to stand there long enough and it would eventually open. But the Saturn version was like, oh no, I have to actually come back at a special time of day.
Yeah. The one on the left I discovered by fluke because I wandered past it going elsewhere. I was like, hang on, the statue's gone. And it was only when I researched the right-hand side one that I realized the reason why it opened.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, too, because you think, like, oh, it'll just be a room, and, like, that one on the left is a whole different area of the game. Like, it allows you access into a big chunk of the game that you may have missed otherwise. Yeah. And that's a thing with Symphony of the Night. There are a lot of people that have played it that are not completionists that you could show different parts of the game, and they would say, like, I've never seen that. Because you really don't have to do everything in the game, even to complete it. Just going up to using Richter as the last boss. And whoopee-doo, man. God help you if you want it, because Richter as a boss by himself without the glasses and without Shaft floating around, that is one hell of a fight.
So you can beat him without glasses.
Hard. Yeah, you can. It's just really hard. He has one ability in particular because he always starts off with holy water. Richter's thing is he gets powered up versions of the item. So if you have enough MP, he can just make it rain holy water for like 10 seconds. And it's nuts. You can get him down to 1% and he decides to make it rain and you're just fucked. Unless, again, you have one of those special weapons that helps get you through it.
So is there any kind of developer? Obviously, you're a massive fan of this, and you've obviously looked at all developer talk and things like that. Is there any specific reason why they decide to put all these secrets in or anything like that, or are they just it's Castlevania? That's what we do.
I think it was Toru Higagashi. I'm probably getting that name wrong. but definitely Igarashi, when they set out to make the game, what they wanted to do was create a game that you could play for a long time. They wanted it to be relaxing and not super stressful. They wanted you to be able to pick up and play it for increments at a time. And then they wanted to have a lot of discovery in the game. And I think that kind of speaks to just letting a graphic artist go nuts and say, hey, let's add this little detail to the game or that detail to the game. Interestingly, this was also the first game with Ayami Kojima. She was the artist. She did all the character designs, and she did the art for all the big sort of dramatic Symphony of the Night art that you see. And she would stay on Castlevania for another 10 years as well. In fact, she's the one that I need to find the art book for. But I think it was her very first game that she had done, and she just kind of went nuts with it, which was great because there's a ton of content in this game. It's one of those games, like I said, you can pick it up and play it 4 or 5 different ways and drastically increase or decrease the difficulty level. And I think that speaks to the play style. Interestingly enough, one of the biggest demographics this game captured was it was very popular with girls and with women. Because they liked the art style of the game, and they liked that it wasn't, a high attention game where it was kind of all or nothing. You could just kind of pick it up and play it at a time. It didn't help it sell well, but it definitely was part of the reception of it, was that it was definitely geared towards a different kind of audience than I think a lot of the PlayStation games were being developed for at the time. It also incorporated really cool little nods that don't make much sense now, like the loading rooms. The rooms that had they were like little transition rooms. They have a black CD at the top that says CD. Those were there, so you never saw a loading screen in the game. They don't make much sense now, but I mean, that really was a neat little tick, because you remember in the original PlayStation generation, man, you saw a lot more loading screens than you did games.
Yeah.
That thing had like 1 mega RAM. So
I always loved the atmosphere of those rooms with no music, because the music is big and bold and it creates so much atmosphere wherever you are. I mean, as I said, the second Castlevania game I played, I loved the music of Castlevania 4 as well. But it creates such an atmosphere, and some really, really just kick-ass tunes in there. And then you go into like the save room, or you go through those like loading corridors, and it's just deathly silent.
Yeah.
And you really, really notice it, and I love it.
Or you go into a boss room and you're like, oh, fuck. I'm not ready.
Why is it quiet? I like how you can go into the boss room and not be immediately locked into it. You're like, fuck, I'm going to turn around.
Yeah. It's always that pan and scan thing. You're in trouble when you walk into a room and the camera pans over. Yeah. Like, oh, damn it, no! I haven't saved in a long time. Interestingly enough, this is Alucard's second game. He was actually in Castlevania 3, The Curse of Dracula. He was one of the 3 playable characters in that game. So if you look at it, it's a great game. Yeah. Super difficult. Yeah. But you can actually, one of the cool bosses, and I don't remember, I think this is in the regular, no, it's in the inverted castle, I'm sorry, is you get to play fake versions of the 3 playable characters from Castlevania 3.
That battle is a bitch.
Yeah. You get to play as Cypher and the little midget that crawls on the ceiling, as well as him, and it's a great boss fight, and it's kind of a great nod to the original games. Which there are a lot of. There is a bat boss in this game, which is fantastic. Every Castlevania game in the mainline series definitely has a big bat boss, and that's fantastic. And there are a lot of, like, Frankenstein and the Mummy and all the Hammer sort of horror villains are in there too. So
I enjoyed
definitely my jam.
I enjoyed the one where you went in and then like he ended up going into a nightmare and obviously saw his mum, and then you had to fight. I think it's the succubus fight.
The succubus, yeah.
That was cool. I really enjoyed that. It was kind of completely out of left field because nothing like that had happened.
Yeah.
And then we praise Celeste gets a lot of praise these days because it's a 2D platformer that incorporates so much story into it without having to like read an instruction manual, because a lot of the 2D games of the past you'd have to read the instruction manual to get any kind of sort of story, and Castlevania was doing this back then. It incorporates that story so much into this 2D. I mean, because in some ways, if you think about it, these Metroidvania style games, they are essentially one big puzzle. You go through building the map, essentially, don't you? Even Super Metroid was like that. I'm going through this area, like I'm building more and more of the map, and if you don't know where to go, you need to go back to an area where you could see there was an entrance, and you're building the puzzle. Yeah. So in some ways, the entire game is one big puzzle, and like I say, Castlevania was doing, something that Celeste is getting praised for now.
Yeah. Well,
not that I'm shitting on Celeste. I'll never shit on Celeste.
No, fair enough. I think one of the things that makes this game a lot more accessible is the mapping system, because the mapping system is very helpful for helping you determine where you didn't go. It auto maps everything. You can actually buy a map for the first castle, which is helpful as you're kind of learning your way around.
I bought that. That's the first thing I bought from the library, dude. But
the auto mapping system, like you'll wear out that button by the end of the game. Where the fuck am I? Where am I supposed to go? Where is left?
Well, that was always the interesting thing, because this is all part and parcel of Metroidvania games anyway. You get a new ability, so you get the bat, and it's like, well, right, I'll look on the map. Where are all the areas that had an entrance, an exit at the top that I haven't been through yet?
Where are all the top and open areas where I knew there was something up there, but I just could never get there before.
Yeah, exactly. Or items I'd seen and things like that, and the exploration side of this. And sometimes exploration games like that can frustrate me a little bit, but until like I said before, until I got to that second castle, I was loving exploring this. I was playing it a lot of work, and as I was playing it on my Vita, so it never got turned off. It was always just put onto standby mode, and obviously I drive for a living, and every single time that I stopped, I'll just put another 10 minutes in, just put another 10 minutes here. I just enjoyed the exploration so much. I did love this game. It's just that end point, I was done.
I get it. Yeah, I do. But like I said, as you learn more and more about the game, like I said, I've got it to the point now where by the time I get to the inverted castle, I'm at 107%, and I usually have an in-game weapon by then, one of them. And again, that just makes there are no barriers once you get one of them. It's Ossifun is a definite great in-game weapon, as is Chrysogrim, which I think you can get both of those in the regular castle. And again, you can just face roll kind of through some of the encounters that would just be maddening. There's an entire section of that game where you remember the first boss that flew around that picked up the other guy?
Mm-hmm.
And
yes,
it was one of the first real bosses. There's a room of those where it's just hundreds of them, and they're all firing differently. They don't pick each other up anymore, but they just, without an in-game weapon, that room would be really, really hard. And there's another section where, for whatever reason, green skeletons get dick lasers. And God knows why. But,
oh, God.
The dick laser room is rough.
Are you talking about the green skeletons?
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
Yeah. Dick lasers are rough because they're almost entirely a one-hit kill.
Someone else who can go and fuck themselves as well is those gremlins with the fire staffs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the ones that just float around going...
Yeah, and they leave the fire there, and they're always in really fucking tight areas.
You can look this one up because you can do it at any point as long as you have enough MP. There's a spell called Soul Steel. Soul Steel will actually burn out those fires for you, and they turn them into HP. So you get to a point in the game where you're like, oh, I could actually use one of those. So yeah, it's one of my favorite games, and it goes down on that list because, again, I find great joy in its art style. I love the music. I would love to hear an orchestral mix of some of that soundtrack. And it's one of the reasons why I am really excited and a backer of Igarashi's next game, which is Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, which is a spiritual successor to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. He's left Konami since I guess he didn't get along with their company politics.
Because fuck Konami.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's done Bloodstained. One of their stretch goals was Bloodstained. I think it was Curse of the Moon was the 2D one that they put out just as kind of a precursor, and that is absolutely...
Is that the thing that's on Game Pass?
I'm not sure. I think so.
Yeah, I've downloaded it. I just haven't played it.
And you can buy it for $5 or $10 on Switch too. I highly recommend it. If you like Castlevania games, that will be your jam. It is a definite old 2D Castlevania. But I tend to gravitate toward games, and I'm the one that can play Hollow Knight through and through and through too. So if Metroidvania games are your jam and you haven't played Symphony of the Night, you have to. It is the seminal title in that.
Yeah, it's definitely the pinnacle.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that Bloodstained, the 3D version that's coming out, will be every bit as good. But I'm cautiously optimistic. It takes a lot to get me to play a game over and over and over again for 20 years.
Yeah.
I can't even play Super Metroid that much, and it's one of my favorite games of all time.
It's funny you bring up Super Metroid. This is because I've never I played Super Metroid for a little bit as a kid. I rented it, and I've never really gone back to it. I had a quick sort of 5-minute dabble on it when I first got my SNES Mini, but playing this has actually made me want to go back and actually play that properly.
Oh, get the lube ready, man. That game is hard.
Yeah, it's rough.
It is hard. It does not have a great auto mapping system. You'll be looking a lot of stuff up in guides, but it's definitely rewarding.
Metroid just has never tickled my fancy at all. I've tried a few of them. I know we tried one for the show. I just couldn't get through it.
It's super difficult, and it doesn't have the cool backstory and art style.
Yeah.
One of the ones that I will recommend, though, and if you haven't played it yet, is Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime for the GameCube is...
I intend to put that on the list next year.
Oh, so. Good. I'll talk about it then, because that game, that game is really a first-person version of Metroid, and that sounds weird, and it's the only time I've ever seen that style of game pulled off as successfully, because it feels genuinely like playing Metroid, but just in 3D, and you're in first-person mode, and it's just got some special sauce, man. That game is awesome. The other two games were just kind of okay, but Metroid Prime 1 was amazing.
Any other thoughts on some Castlevania before we move on?
I just want to say, like, I love listening to people be passionate about games that they love, and sitting here, having you here, Zach, has been really nice, like, just listening to you and all of the bits and bobs that you know about it, and it's been really nice just sitting here and listening to you.
For the record, I got a bits and bobs. Bits and bobs right here. Thanks very much. Yeah, I can talk about Castlevania all day long.
I've been enthralled listening to you, honestly.
If you ever want to play any of the other Castlevania games, I can recommend some good ones. There are 20 games in the Castlevania mainline sort of canon story. Interestingly, Symphony Night sits right in the middle of all of them, in terms of the timeline. And then it ends with, I think it's Dawn of Sorrow is one of the last ones. Dawn of Sorrow is actually set in 2645 or something.
Isn't that a GBA game or a DS?
I think it's a DS game. But
I've wanted to dabble in those, but they're really expensive.
Really expensive.
And hard to find.
Those might be one to hook up the emulator. I'm just saying.
Emulate.
But they're all super good. And those were all the Igarashi games. And the Igarashi games are all just absolutely fantastic. Also, Symphony of the Night probably shares more in common with Simon's Quest, so give that one a shot if you haven't. And Castlevania 3 is an absolutely fabulous game, but man, there's a lot of rape in that game. Just be prepared. It's just rape every time you turn around, because you'll be doing really good, and you'll get to a stage and be like, I'm going to die here 70 times.
The two games that I've played, two Castlevania, because I don't ask me why. I think it's because my main Castlevania knowledge has always been sort of Simon's Quest. When we originally planned to play Castlevania 4, I was a bit like, oh god, Castlevania game. And then we played it and I loved it. And then, I've known that this one has always been praised very highly, and going into it I was still, Castlevania 4 was good, but how's this one actually going to be? Is it as good as everyone says? And I've turned into a convert. I like Castlevania games, the ones I've played anyway.
I would highly recommend avoiding the first one, because it's hard as balls and has nothing in common with this game.
Yeah, and you've made me really appreciate this one. Like, I mean, I loved it anyway. I really, really enjoyed what I played of it, but you've really made me appreciate what went into it and how great it truly is.
Oh, I'm glad I could bring the joy to your life. Now, if you're still playing it 20 years from now, I know I'll have done my job. But
I think one day I'll probably play through it again and go for that inverted castle. But I think, as it stands at the moment, I probably won't pick it back up now to finish it off.
Get ready, because there are some hard bosses as you go further into the inverted castle. There's one in particular that if you don't have a specific item set, you're just not going to beat him.
Which one's that, just out of interest?
It's Gorlak. He's a big lightning boss, and you have to have the lightning armor, because lightning armor converts lightning damage to health, and he just sits there and spews lightning at you the whole time. Like, it's almost impossible. You either have to have a weapon that lets you phase in and out, or that.
Well, that's how I finally beat Beelzebub, because Beelzebub has these weird little maggots that fall on the floor that poison you.
Oh, yeah.
And I managed to... I realised I had I thought, I'm going to have to change my setup, and I was like, oh, fuck, I've got an item here that turns poison into health. That'll be handy.
I remember Beelzebub being hard, because the first time I played it, because I couldn't figure out, oh, fuck, I've got to jump and hit and dodge all these stupid flies, and that was just really, really hard.
I went and farmed axes. because there was
good
a
for you.
room next to it
Yeah.
which had axes in it. I went and found a load of hearts and eventually just used it with that.
Yeah, I have the Eric Peterson style of play. Fuck it, I'm going into this room. I don't care. I'll just use what I have. Holy water. I can use that on a flying enemy.
Brute force. There were a lot of
Did you
rooms
guys-
where I would just walk in and those Cthulhu, those flying Cthulhu-looking creatures, I never really wanted to fight them. So I would get hit from a skeleton that would phase me through the Cthulhu, then I'd hit the Cthulhu and phase me through the next one. So I would just damage force my way through a room sometimes. Like, oh, I'm on the other side now. Hope there's a save point.
So I'd be doing a disservice I didn't ask. What was your favorite boss?
Granfaloon.
Okay.
I love that guy. He was fucking awesome.
What was the...
I liked it because it was so stupid. It was so ridiculous. It's this ball of bodies floating in the middle of the room. And if you're on the bottom level, it's just this horde of undead that are constantly hitting you. And then you've got little platforms on the side that you can jump up on. So I decided to use one of the claymores, the two-handed weapons. So I would jump off the top platform and stick the sword out and just fall through the entire side of Granfaloon and just like damage 3 or 4 sections of him at a time, and then go to the other side and do the same, and then you'd have the core. So it was kind of cheese in it, but I thought he was a cool boss.
Yeah, visually he was very impactful.
Well, and he actually appears in later games. He always appears as a boss called Legion. But yeah, he makes it into a couple other Castlevania games. Interestingly enough, he has a hard mode. If you knock all the bodies off all of his pieces, he becomes a floating death ray laser.
I noticed that so he still had like his top third, just that top piece above him. I knocked off all the sides and then the bottom, and he has these little tentacles that start firing lasers out. I'm like, well, I think I did myself a disservice here.
Yeah. Better to leave him alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you, Mike?
It's better to... yeah.
He was... I agreed with Eric with that. He was one of my favorites for sure. Despite the fact that I hated fighting it and it was a bitch, like, in terms of just visual design, I thought Beelzebub was cool. The way it was just got kind of, like, horrible hanging corpse. And then the actual boss fight was a bit shit because I absolutely killed her. But like I mentioned earlier, that whole dream sequence before Succubus was cool because it gave the boss like character. Like the other ones, you go into a room, the boss is there, you kill it. This one, you went in there, you know, she messed with your mind and then like gives you a bit of shit beforehand and everything like that. And I thought that was cool. She was just really easy to beat.
I didn't like the crow lady. I don't really know what her name was. She was towards the top, but super easy to cheese. You could just get her up in one corner and then you could jump, attack, and then by the time you fell down and jumped again, her animation cycle would end. So you could just rinse, repeat that. I don't know what was her name.
I don't remember, but she had that stupid move where she would just fly up in the air and throw all the feathers at you.
Yeah, that one.
And like if you don't duck that, you're just dead.
Yeah, but if you can get her into the top left corner and just cheese her out.
And just nail her, yeah. Well, it's like the doppelganger fight.
Yeah.
If you can just keep him in the air, like that fight is super easy. It takes 5 hits. But if you let him get on the ground and start throwing knives, it's just over.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find out what it was called, but there was one that I cheesed really, really. Sorry. Side note: I'm on a website to try and find the names of the bosses, and your mouse cursor turns into like a little Belmont, and when you click on anything, it whips. Anyway, is it Skilla? The lady on the walls with the tentacles?
Yeah.
She's on the bottom right-hand side of the map, isn't she? Yeah. Proper cheesed her because I accidentally fell behind her.
Oh,
and she couldn't attack me, so I just stood there and kept hitting her with my sword.
That's actually one of the best strategies to hit her.
That's one with like the dragon heads, right?
Yeah. That's a cool 2-phase boss because you actually fight one of those dragon heads first, and then you don't get with the life up. You're like, what the fuck? And then you manage up there like, oh, because you have a lady as your top half. That's interesting.
In terms of my favorite enemy, just because of how ridiculous it was, there was these... There'd be 2 guys like holding up like a dragon head on like a plank of wood.
Oh, yeah.
And if you like took out one of the guys... and then like took out the dragon head, the other guy just runs away with his arms flailing, and I love it.
Yep. I like the monster bush lady. Like she's completely clothed until you get to about her midsection, and then her butt's hanging out, and her bush is just a giant walking green lizard.
Yeah, I love those ones. she's the tail of this giant bush creature.
Yeah,
and her ass. You see
the
her
old
ass
2D butt crack. Yeah.
70s porn bush monster.
Oh,
There's definitely some deviant art.
10-year-old,
isn't there?
10-year-old Eric loves that.
There is a surprise if you play the Japanese version in particular, where they render a pixel for every nipple. There's a lot of nudity in this game, which is fine by me. But it got toned down in the U.S. release. But yeah, it's pretty funny.
Damn Americans.
Yep.
We have some questions on this game.
Questions.
Steph A. Nee.
Oh, Stephanie knows a lot about
Sent
Castlevania
us
Symphony of the Night.
an email. She started a comment and said, I better send an email instead. So, hello to you fine British gentlemen and Eric. Well, and Zach.
Hey, Zach, you're British.
Yeah.
One of us.
Right.
That was Australian.
That was pretty good.
Too right.
No, that was definitely Australian, that second one.
It's the same thing. All the Australians are just degenerate British, aren't they?
I can go South African and talk about the denigration of the races. That's really all.
She says, I respectfully request discussion of Granfalloon. It's hands down the best 2D boss in gaming, in my opinion. This is not based on its difficulty, but the general aesthetic, the music, shrieking, bodies raining down, it's just glorious.
Oh, yeah, it's gross.
She said, even though I had this game since its release thanks to my dad, I didn't really hunker down with my PS1 for solo gaming until senior year of high school. Started Symphony of the Night over the summer before I went off to college, and it was my respite. Well, away from home like most people for the first time. Well, imagine in my sheer shock and subsequent joy encountering Granfalloon for the first time alone in my dorm room. Eventually, I got a friend so hooked on my progress she'd come over to just get updates and watch me play, including going after the 200.6 with a text-only walkthrough from GameFAQs. We ended up blasting that ridiculous credit song, I Am the Wind, to the point that my entire dorm floor, all girls, thought I was mad. Needless to say, I didn't make any friends that year. Anyway, my questions are, thoughts on Granfalloon? I think we covered that. Thumbs up. Number 2, this one's not for Dan. Do you wish this game was harder? I think we talked about how you can make it harder. Play as Richter, play as Maria.
Yeah, you can definitely make it harder.
Yeah, I don't wish it was harder.
But I do kind of wish that the difficulty spike in the inverted castle wasn't such a brick wall.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely like, from the minute you start, like, oh, you're fucked.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't make it to that save point? Screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you didn't level up enough? You didn't get enough of those hidden health pots? Yeah, you don't have enough health for that.
I think if it was more gradual, I'd take it on the chin a bit more, because like it is a brick wall. It really, really is. Like, I agree with you with that, and because I never really found the main castle difficult at all.
Yeah.
There were a couple
There was the
spots.
odd boss in there. Yeah, a couple of spots like those fucking gremlins I was on about. But generally, no, not hard. It was a
Those
pleasant
goddamn
time.
flea enemies, the flea armors, fuck those guys.
Yeah, they suck. But they've sucked since the original Castlevania when they flow in on eagles.
Yeah.
So,
Question 3, did you
question.
straight up hack and slash, or did you use spells and familiars? I heavily used the bats. Seriously, having 3 is great, and the shield rod spells, though I also employed a fair amount of dark metamorphosis, but that's probably because it's the easiest spell to button mash.
I soul steal my way through most of that game, honestly, until I have lots of health. So, yeah, I'm a cheater.
Brute forced my way through.
Yeah, me too. I did the Eric Peterson. I attempted to use the spells every now and again, but then I kept forgetting about them because I like I said, I kept picking it up and putting it down, picking it up and putting it down. I kept forgetting what the combos for the spells were. So I just forgot they existed.
My biggest challenge is I never use the items because I hate having to swap out items and then put my sword back on.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe I didn't bring this up.
Yeah, it's irritating.
You know, for a game that can be praised for its lack of clunkiness, man, that's a fucking clunky system. So if you've never played Symphony of the Night and you're listening to this, you have to, like Eric said earlier, you've got your left arm and your right arm, which can be weapons or a shield or whatever, and to use an item, you have to go into the menu, equip the item to one of your arms, come out of the menu, press that button, so left arm or right arm, so square and circle, and then pick the item up to use it.
It's
well,
annoying.
and not just... Yeah, and in the original PlayStation version, you had to wait for that menu to load. It was awful. The only time I ever used it in this game was trying to get my peanut achievement, which I can't do because I can't fucking eat the peanuts in the game. I've tried. I'm never going to get that trophy. Peanut is a thing that you throw straight up in the air, and you're supposed to... It's added for this game just to give you a trophy, and then you have to figure out how many pixels you have to walk to the left or right to eat it.
Oh, Jesus.
Because before it falls, and I've like save stated it to do it, and I can't do it, so I just give up.
And how many
I'm
do you
never
need to
gonna-
do?
Just one. It's just really hard. And I've seen people do it on their first try. I've just never been able to do it. So I don't care enough about the platinum in this game because it's tied to the Rondo of Blood. And if you get a chance and you play the Requiem Collection, play the Rondo of Blood to appreciate how easy Castlevania Symphony of the Night is. Because Rondo of Blood is rock hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Her last question, did Jeremy Mario Paint Sanford ever get his Xbox game? No. I had it with me when I went to ship out Zach's birthday present, and I walked back out to the car and saw it sitting on the driver's seat as I pulled away and went, well, I'll go back and send that later.
How many times did you send me my birthday present? Because I think that was twice.
Yeah, it was twice. I get sidetracked.
You're not having much luck with postage recently, are you, Eric?
Jesus, no, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Eric sent me a package that I bought and asked him to ship over because it was only available in America. And granted, this isn't Eric's fault, but we were checking the tracking of it because Eric's like, should have arrived by now. And for some reason, the tracking ended up messed up on it. And it said that it went to San Francisco from Phoenix, then went across to London, and then London, they'd sent it back to San Francisco. We were like, what? Turns out it was actually on its way to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it finally did show up, but it was the first time I've ever sent anything that's gotten hit with a customs fee. But we discovered it's because it was worth more than $135.
Yeah. Which it wasn't, really.
Man, I'm really glad that some of the eBay stuff I bought from Japan doesn't ever touch customs, because some of that's way expensive.
There is one other question from the Facebook page as well. From Mark Marcheshi. He says, what's your favourite shape-shifting form in the game and also in general?
I liked fart form.
Yeah, I like poison fart form. That's the titties right there, when you can just fart through somebody and kill a whole screen.
Yep. It's great.
It's excellent.
Death by fart.
In the game, yeah, I think the bat for me, because sometimes if you're getting stuck from enemies, you just turn to the bat and fly away. And fuck you guys! I'm going home.
Well, here, Mike, this one's just for you. Did you know the bat has a super move too?
As a what?
If you hold square and then start at the top and do a circle all the way around to forward and let go of square at the same time, he actually does a power move. He thrusts through the screen. That's the way to clear through big long screens that you don't want to. Hits enemies.
I picked up the thing so you could spit fire.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's power of bat, right? Yeah.
I think that's it for Castlevania. If you want to send us any questions or your thoughts on it, facebook.com/group/factorysealedpodcast, I think it is.
Also, Stephanie, thank you for the email. We love receiving emails.
Yeah, factorysealed@manatank.com. We are on Patreon at patreon.com/factorysealed. Let's see here. What's next? We are doing
Star Wars.
The Force Unleashed. I'm excited for that. I started it.
Get ready to hit square.
Yeah, it's like the precursor to Batman.
Square. X square.
By the way, listeners, if you're excited to ever hear me and Eric fall out, Dan has put Arkham Asylum onto the docket for later this year. I have a feeling me and Eric are going to fall out quite a lot.
That will be funny.
Sorry, me and Dan will go and do our own episode.
I'm going to get a special version of a controller that's just a square button and see if I can get through the game. I'm going to remove all of the other buttons from my controller and prove to you that you can get through that game doing nothing but square.
As I said the other day, you struggle with controls, Eric, and you're worried about playing Batman because you won't have the complication of controls to...
I'm not worried about it. I'm just... Dan always comes back. He's like, it's so much more complex. It's not. It's square.
No, it is.
Yeah, Resident Evil Chainsaw controller, get the fuck out.
I'm going to remove all of the other buttons. I have a spare controller that I will just pull them all out. Like, I'm just pressing square.
If you're doing the fights properly, you need more than square.
Nah. You can get through it. I'll prove it to you. But that's coming up much later this year. After Star Wars, we're doing Fable. And then Mike's glorious 1 hour game.
No, are we going to do both of them?
Do what?
because there's a sequel on the Game Boy as well, which is like an hour long as well.
Okay, so Mike's 2 glorious 1 hour long games. A Boy and His Blob, and
the sequel that I can't remember the name of right now.
Also a boy and his other blob.
A teen and his blob?
Yeah.
No, it's the name of the place. It's like Blobania or Blobinia or some shit like that.
Blobopolis.
I can't remember what it's called.
And then we're going to start our summer RPG playthrough of Kingdom Hearts, which I think we're going to dial down to 2 shows, potentially 3. And I think we should sub in a PS2 FPS called Black. Because
that is an excellent game. It's really hard.
Tom and I bought that when he was down here, and holy shit, that game is a ton of fun. It's made by the guys that did Burnout, and what a cool first-person shooter. I'll save my thoughts on it for when we eventually do it, but yeah, that's the next couple months looking up, and then I think Dan, out of reluctance, did end up keeping Zelda 2 on there because he'd have a massive falling out in the community if we took that out.
Well, it's funny because that's where he wanted to put Batman, and then he was like, "Oh, well, actually, it's still like a week away from being 10 years old. Can we still do it?" No.
Oh my god, my Facebook Messenger is just going to be a litany of these guys asking me like, "What the fuck? What do I do now?" I cannot wait for that because I'm not going to answer any of you.
I can.
That game is so ridiculously hard.
And it's 12 hours long.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
Well, I mentioned it to me and Hazel laid in bed one morning. And it was the morning that we were discussing this whole thing where Dan wanted to take it out. And obviously Zelda 2's on the NES Online thing on the Switch. And my Switch was on my bedside table. And we were doing Zelda 2. And Hazel was like, "Zelda 2? No, that's amazing. Yeah, like, you should play that." I said, "Hazel, it's not amazing." "No, it's really, really good." I was like, "Right, play it right now and tell me how good it is." And just shove the Switch into her hand. She played it for like 10 minutes and she's like, "I think I'm done now."
Yeah,
how was it? And she wouldn't mention it.
Sometimes Nintendo's bravery pays off, and in that case, it did not.
I'm not looking forward
I know
to that.
people love it, but it's just not my favorite Zelda game.
On the bright side, we've got Link's Awakening remake coming out soon.
Yeah,
Rock
and
on.
then we're only a handful of months away from going back and going broke in Missouri again.
Oh, my wallet's not ready. Look, it's like,
Ew, help me! I already,
no, sir.
I have a stack of cash set aside for that, so we're ready for it this time, Chad.
Isn't Tom joining you this time?
He is.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah, but we're gonna get the hotel room with the same amount of beds, so it's really weird.
I told Ben we need to bring an air mattress so he doesn't need to sleep on the pizza grease couch.
The dead camel.
Actually, I don't think Tom will be staying with us because I think his girlfriend's coming with. So it'll still just be you and me and Ben sharing a mega stuff.
No, even
Oreo.
better. Force Cat
Awesome.
to be in there as well.
It's just excellent. We can give Kat her own room. Tom has to stay with us.
I say this time, Zach, you and I are in charge of the alcohol.
Yeah.
That way we're
I
not
can't-
drinking 87 cans of piss water.
No, I'd like to take the Mark Martucci route and drink one beer that's 97% alcohol and forget about it, and then drink 8 other drinks and then just be totally pissed for days.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that was fun times.
So that's definitely coming up. But other than that, gentlemen, that is today. Zach, thanks so much for joining us.
Happy
Yeah, it's
to.
been a pleasure.
Always happy to show up and talk about games, gentlemen.
Nice to actually be on a show. This is your third show, and I think this is the first one I've been on.
I know. See, you got to show up more often, Mike. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I just make fun of you.
Which is funny, because there was no conspiracy theory that I was Zach, which is what usually
I
happens.
know. It's just I ate somebody, and that was Mike.